Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death. This is Uncle Walt from the Ironworks. Josh, Corey, and I have chosen to look at life with no fear. No fear of the unknown. No fear of questions about the supposedly well-known. No fear of ridicule for thinking outside the familiar fool's lines. No fear of the boot on the neck of those refusing the party line. No fear of taking on those so convinced of their beliefs they would sooner drink the Kool-Aid than believe they've been fools made. In this world filled with me too, cattle think, can truth's protective layers be peeled back to show the tender, juicy pink? Are we all just grist for the mill? Souls sold against our will, or is that just how it feels? When you're filled to the rim with TV-alities so fear-filled and grim, break clear of the fear. Right here, Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 a.m. on TFR. Josh and I and you will hammer out the impurities of technology-driven groupthink, fold in a dash of logic, and quench it all with a bit of absurdity. The Ironworks. Break clear of the fear.
TGIF, thank God it's flat. Hello everybody, it's the Iron Realm Media. You're listening to the Flat Earth Friday FRINGE-CAST. Welcome everybody. We have quite a show planned today. First, let's get a few introductions out of the way. Joining us almost every week, we have James, TheFullArmorOG, straight out of Canada. James, how are you doing this week?
Hello, Josh. Hello, panel. I'm doing very well. It's great to be here, and I am so excited for today's show. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, we are always happy to have you, James. It's an open invitation. You deserve this just as much as any of us do, one way or the other. We also have...
Today is a really exciting show, though.
Yeah, it is.
Today's great.
I'm pumped. We also have, feeling a little sickly, one Mr. Adam Meakin. Adam, welcome.
Good evening, guys. Yeah, I'm feeling sorry for myself. But, I had a good week otherwise. I just want to do a quick shout out to West Coast Warrior. Got in touch this week and found out we're from the same area. She sent me a load of info to rifle through. So, cheers, me duck. Thanks a lot. But yeah, other than that, I've been waiting for Rob to join in. We've got the Battle of England. Australia has begun. It's a good old tussle. So looking forward to settling down to a bit of cricket this week and teasing Rob.
Well, a shout out to West Coast Wisdom. I'm going to say a quick shout out to West Coast Wisdom. I know she pops in chat quite often, and we're likely to see her before the evening is through. So let's move right on then to Rob. Rob, you are here.
Hello.
Not nearly enough. We need to get you on a lot more.
Yeah, we seem to have very, very busy shows, and I sit there very, very quiet these days. But I haven't been doing much other than being a steering wheel jockey this week again. But before we get on to our really important stuff this week, because I listen to the radio, and people might be aware that songs that we listen to on the radio might have some meaning. And I listened to an REM song the other day. We might have even talked about this before. I haven't heard anyone talk about it. I can't really remember. But an REM song called Stand. Does anyone know that one?
Of course.
I think I've heard it once.
I do indeed, sir.
And just reading the lyrics here. Stand in the place where you live, now face north. Think about the direction, wonder why you haven't before. Now stand in the place where you work, now face west. think about the place where you live, wonder why you haven't before. If you are confused, check with the sun. Carry a compass to help you along. Your feet are going to be on the ground. Your head is there to move you around. I listened to that the other day. I thought, wow, REM, they've got a few songs.
There
like that.
is
Yeah,
that's
they're
something.
very aware and very, very awake, I believe.
So,
And I'm having a flashback, Rob. I think we might have talked about this on one of the
Yeah,
fringes like a
we
couple
did
years
way
ago
back.
on
Yeah,
our
we did.
songs. With the Fool on the Hill.
right, yeah. No, I think it was another REM song that we were talking about that time. But yeah. So no,
Walt has
yeah.
a couple too. Yeah, that had some flat Earth stuff.
Well, that's good stuff. Thanks for that, Rob.
No worries.
And then I believe we did hear Walter. Walter, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. We had a great morning so far. It's been a wonderful day. I can't wait to get into this great show we're going to have today. Hi, guys. Hope y'all all are doing great. I know everybody's a little under the weather or fighting something. Adam, you in your industry, I don't see how you're not sick a lot more than you are, man, with all the people in and out there bringing the germs. So I definitely commiserate. I've been recovering from the whatever, Kim flu or whatever they're sprinkling on us these days.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going around. I know there's a lot of people sick around me, too. Let's see. As far as Iron Realm Media goes, I think that leaves us with just one more person. Mr. John Savage. John, how's everything going?
Good evening.
You got your...
Everything's going very well here. Yeah, intensive week. Very enjoyable, but mentally intensive. Uphill learning curve on Linux and, yeah, all sorts of things going on. Amazing I've actually got here tonight. So, yeah, looking forward to this. It's going to be a cracker.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, that brings us to the man of the well, I say hour, but very rarely do we ever only go an hour. But that brings us to the man to whom we all basically sort of worship is such a bad word, but we want to make sure that we give this gentleman his proper dues. This is a guy that I think we've all watched before we found Flat Earth and before we found, Iron Realm Media as it is today. This is a guy that has been out there at the forefront of this truther movement and is now being put in the position to be in the forefront and standing up for our freedom of speech. He asked if maybe we thought we should be put sort of on the hot seat with him as a guest or on YouTube or sort of out in the Google world. And the answer is absolutely. Because this is what it's going to take for us to get our freedom of speech back. Make sure we get our freedoms back, our power back. You have to stand up for it. If you don't exercise it, if you don't take it, if you don't claim it, the rights isn't yours. So they'll take us down. Maybe they'll shut us up. Probably they're doing a good job with him. But we got to put our foot down somewhere. And this seems to be the best place and the best time because, what better place than here? What better time than now? Ladies and gentlemen, Crrow777. Thank you so much for joining us, Crrow.
Hey, thanks for having me. Maybe I should have a new intro. I'm like the YouTuber formerly known as Crrow777.
There you go. I was trying to think if maybe we could come up with another little knockoff name. The blackbird singing in the dead of night. The albatross. I don't know. There has to be something we can use besides Crow that'll still get the point across.
Dodo.
Well, I guess there's that too.
Those went extinct, man. Go easy on me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It is an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you sitting in on our quaint little show here. We do call it the best little flat Earth show you've never heard. But our fan base isn't very big, but man, are they loyal. So I just wanted to have everybody in chat say hello to Crrow777. I know there should be quite a few people tuning in to listen to this, just to see how long we last. I'm a bit curious myself to see how long it takes for him to kick us off.
Oh, that's right. You guys are doing the whole Google Live thing too, so you got like a chat room going?
Well, we're not actually going through Google. I just have OBS open, so I'm just streaming the Skype call, basically.
Got it.
Yeah, between Tim
I'm
Osman...
streaming here as well, Josh. So if anything happens to your channel, then hop on over to mine it should still be going. Everything's green at the moment.
Yeah, everything is green here too. And I will say this, if for some reason they do try to take us down or they do kill us going live like they did when we were trying to play the Astro Smurf, we will just finish this offline and we will upload it at our earliest convenience. Hopefully they don't try to kill the channel then. If I have to, I'll go back and edit out and kind of make his voice anonymous. We can get that stuff done. So
well,
it'll happen.
It's always very telling when those tossers chuck a wicked googly, isn't it?
That's pretty good.
I don't even know if I used it. I don't even know if I used any of that correctly.
The googly was correct. I thought
they're not tossers. I figured Google must be tossers.
Curveball.
A good cricket analogy. I like it. Yeah. So you're quiet on that, Rob. You're quiet on that, Rob. We've got to get a bit of sports, just because.
What? Which sports? I don't follow rugby union. It's crap.
Oh, the cricket, mate.
Yeah, we'll flog you at that. Don't worry about that.
I just wanted a statement. That'll do. Oh, he's gone. He's hung up on that.
I guess that tells us all we need to hear about that.
It's probably John hacked us for talking sports. But I'll stop. I'm done.
Yay, sports ball. Anyway, so Crow, you just released a new episode. Before we get into all the stuff that they're trying to keep you from saying, let's first talk about what you have most recently said. You and Jason released your newest episode on 5G and AI. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as we started getting really we're all kind of still wearing our first set of diapers in this censorship thing, right? It's only been a few weeks since this came on so blatantly strong. I might have that wrong. Maybe it's been a couple months. I don't rightly remember. I should probably write these things down. But as we started getting into it, we wanted to go at the foundational things. The last episode we did before they murdered my Google channel was the idea of zero or nothingness. And in that, we were able to show many of the frauds that so many of us accept as true, like that Einstein is a great man, or that a black hole is anything but nonsense, gravity, nonsense, all these things that are attributed, which can be demonstrated in one way, shape, or form by using the idea of zero or the idea of nothing, which has no existence in natural reality. So as we came up on the show I just put out this morning, episode 83, we wanted to project the foundations that are coming into existence now that in our estimation, people are going to look back on someday and commiserate. Why did we let this happen? And the 5G networks are a big part of that, and the AI. But I think what most people don't understand as well, it could be argued whether 5G is just coming to be for the first time, which it is, the network that will be out in the world everywhere. AI has been around for a lot longer than most people think. And as so many are familiar, AI just got citizenship in Saudi, and there's a cryptocurrency. We cover all this to kind of show. And what I have been doing for the past, I don't even know how many shows, is tying it all to 9/11 as the kind of day where the opposition, the kind of world leaders that pushed the pieces around on the chess table, laid their hand down. That day was 9/11, and I think that most of us have kind of forgotten or heard it so much that we just don't want to think about it anymore. But it's, next time you see one of those cheesy bumper stickers, never forget, from some person who hasn't quite figured out what actually happened on 9/11, that it had nothing to do with Islamic terror, you should take it to heart, because that is the foundational doorway we came through, where this is not going to be hidden anymore. These people think that they have enough control and power and stagecraft to put this crap out in the open, which is what we're seeing online with the censorship now. But I don't know how much I wandered there. Maybe I should start drinking or something.
Just on 9/11, do you think it's growing, the people in America knowing that there's not something quite right about that? I know when I started looking at it in 2008, 2009, there wasn't many of yous over there that, and definitely not here as well, but there wasn't many over there. So do you think it's growing fast over there, that subject as well?
When I first started tackling the false flags, 9/11 among them, when I put up a video, there was hell to pay. There would be the most blatant comments and threats, and as time went on, that lessened. By the time we got up to the Boston bombing hoax, people wouldn't even challenge me anymore. I stood my ground, and I noticed a thing about this. It's hard for us to tell how much this is controlled opposition because we don't control the information sources. But what I began to detect, and this happened in spades at the nonsensical Vegas event that we just had on the day that was also encoded to 9/11 in the fall. Of course, I've covered these things, but the people who stood up to say rightly that this is not a real event were attacked. I mean, straight away, there were like gangs of people waiting in one way, shape, or form to go at them. The people that folded, they got it hard, man. When they didn't stand their ground, then there was like a dog pile. I've always stood my ground, and this time, no one even challenged me. The few times before, no one's even challenged me, and I think that's a tell. Since we really can't understand what we'd like to understand, how many people out there get it, we don't control the information. Google controls the stats on anything like YouTube or anything else. So we can't really know what we want to know, but we can gauge it in the way I'm trying to demonstrate here, where even when I first posted the first lunar wave, I mean, what was it, a year and a half of hell I went through? Then I filmed the second lunar wave. So there was another, I forget what it was, 3 or 6 months of hell, people saying I faked it and I was lying and all these things. Then finally someone else filmed it. Well, over time, the attacks don't come anymore. The people will come and say, I don't agree with you, or clearly an airplane did that, or clearly that's atmosphere, any of the arguments that people like to put out there if they don't accept that there's something to this, but they're not attacking. And see, this is a tell because it reflects a consciousness, a state of consciousness in my view. So I would estimate that, first off, 9/11 was designed to be discovered. I think it was actually planned, laid out, and designed to be discovered. That way, when a few million people were aware of it and none of them did anything about it, they take that as tacit permission in the same way that we all have our kind of corporate identities. It's a similar idea. But anyhow.
Crow, I'd like to just ask a question there about the 9/11 thing. I mean, listening to the your podcast and that, I hear you and I see you highlighting the 9/11s everywhere and the count the ways. Is it? I mean, you were saying the other day that you've seen 9/11 in black and white movies and that sort of thing from the 20s, maybe. Is it when they're referencing 9/11 or when we're seeing this 9/11 reference, is it referencing the actual Twin Towers being hit by aeroplanes in 2011, or is it just the 9/11 itself is a symbolic? It's telling us something is not right here, or some magic's being played on us.
See, that's the perfect question. That's the thinking person's question. The truth is, we can't answer it, can we? We can deduce what we can deduce, but like, let's say one of those movies I saw back in the 40s, black and white, where the clock on the wall on more than one occasion is encoding 9/11. Having looked at the Crowley work, which, he became so famous on Beatles albums, and the Luciferians all like to act like he's a great man, which he's not, by the way. He didn't invent anything. He just went around the world stealing from traditions that were much more older. In my view, that's what he did. He's a little bit like Taekwondo. He took karate, took all the honorable stuff out of it, the symbolic stuff, and he just left in the stuff that would break bones. Like Taekwondo did that with karate. That's kind of what Crowley did. But we know from that his opinion and the kind of Luciferian opinion is that 11 is the evilest of numbers. We've long since associated that 11 is often used in what I call the casting of a spell. And then there's 9. Nobody needs to be told that 9's a magic number. In the 0 episode I did, we showed that that's the completion number and that base 10 has an imposter, that imposter being 0. So the question you asked, to get back to the point, is can we deduce whether they're foreshadowing at 9/11? My answer is this. We go back to the 40s, I'm not sure we can prove it, but it sure seems damn likely that they know something 9/11 is going to be done. By the time we get up into color films and things like that, in a lot of cases we can demonstrate they're foreshadowing. Not too long ago, to go, let's see, what would it be, 23 or 24 years before the event itself. I sent Jason a clip on Mary Tyler Moore doing a dance number with the first Batman, of course, The Dark Knight, Michael Keaton, and David Letterman, who served 33 years in New York City. And they're all wearing football jerseys, and she's singing the Paul McCartney song With a Little Help and keeps waving her arms in front of the 9 and 11 on the football jerseys, which always end up back together, singing the words, everyone watch while the town explodes. With a little luck, we can make this whole damn thing work out, and continually waving her arms by the 9/11. So by the time we get up to that point, 20 some years before the fact, we can demonstrate what they're doing.
So she's just on that
movies
so
too.
she's
Remember
dancing
Back
around.
to the Future. Oh, sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
So she's dancing around, and I haven't seen this clip. So she's dancing around, pointing to the. Do you think she's got any idea what she's actually doing?
Well, you see, that's a problem. In a lot of cases, I think it could be argued back in the day. I don't think there's any arguing for the modern entertainment industry at all. You got to realize in the 80s is when brands quit being things and began being people, like with Madonna was one of the first people to do that. These people are integral, and most of them are bloodlined or something into the entertainment industry. That's been shown over and over. But whether or not Mary Tyler Moore knew, she knew when to wave her arm when she was in front of the 9.
I just see it as, someone says, here, Michael, you have number 9. The other dude that you said, number 11. And Mary, you did, it's just a script. So obviously someone, that's too coincidental for me. But,
well, it is coincidental, but then the question you're asking is, did Mary Tyler Moore know? And my response to that is, it's very unlikely that she didn't. And the reason is because when they're all dancing around and the 9 and 11 keep coming back together, she waves her arms in front of those two numbers. I guess it could be argued that camera angle could get you that kind of a view. But for my part, you're talking about Mary Tyler Moore, big part of 70s entertainment. I would be surprised if she didn't know. And of course, you got David Letterman and the first Batman sitting there. Batman is endlessly included. Even to this day in Big Bang, how often are you shown Batman? The Dark Knight of Gotham City. These things are all integral to the encoding that they do.
Maybe we could play that video later.
And the 9/11 towers show up numerous times in comics, as you know, that's been encoded throughout.
Well, for some reason, only Jewish people can make things that matter in our world. All the comic books were created by Jewish people. And people always want me to harp on race, and I'll never do it. As a matter of fact, I've pointed out in episodes, in my view, Jewishness is not a race. There is no gene that someone can look at to determine whether you're Jewish or not. It's something else altogether. I think originally it was initiation level. When we did some of the encoding from the Vatican shows, we demonstrated that in early Masonic tradition, Christian, Jew, Hebrew, I'm forgetting one, were all initiation levels. Hebrew was above Royal Arch levels. And there's lots to show, but nonetheless, there seems to be certain families, and of course their religion is some form of Judaism. I don't even know if that's true. I think there's a lot of Luciferian ideas mixed in with what we see. And they have a hand, and that's the entertainment side of things. Everybody knows who runs Hollywood, but the comic books are no different. These themes come to us over and over and over, but then I suppose we could point at things like the Vatican or anywhere else. There does seem to be sex, but these are hard things to know. Maybe we could send some people out to hold people down and take their blood, and we could determine these things.
Well, that would be one way to do it. Yeah, I was going to say, that's definitely one way to do it. Definitely not the NAP way, but that's a way to do it.
No, that was a joke. Because we were talking.
The blood does seem to be a big component of all of this. I mean, obviously the magic ties into the blood, but even the AI, I mean, they're spraying things. They're putting nanotechnology, the black goo. I mean, man, we can go so many places with this. It's so far-reaching, and so the tentacles are everywhere, literally.
Yeah, a lot of it is false leads, though. I never accepted the whole black goo thing. My problem is this. no matter what's put before me, I'm coming back to common sense first. And I would rather be wrong having used common sense than have been right going off on a tangent in some direction. The reason for that is much of the illusions that people fall for from media is because of details, these little mysterious mind hooks. It's what prevents a person from being able to determine that Vegas was nonsense. It's all those details that suck them in. If a human being can just step back and use common sense, a lot of times, man, you don't need a lot more than that. Unfortunately, you've got to train yourself back to common sense for some period of time. But my point here is when people start talking about the nanotech and all these other things, well, we know these things exist. I'm always going to come in with common sense and say, hey, wait a minute, not so fast. Sure, these things exist. We know they do. But where's our foundation to talk about it? You see, if there's no foundational solid thing to talk about here, then I say we move on. Because what's more important, in my view, is to get people to understand what media is for. In the last episode I just did, episode 83, I took a line out of Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. Quite often, the little crow cartoon in my album art for my podcasts, the crow is always thinking something. Almost 80-90% of the time, what the crow is thinking is taken from popular music. Often rock music. See, there's a theme there because that's the media we all grew up with. Those are the songs that are in our heads. So many of those songs have something to tell us. As a matter of fact, you guys were singing Stand in the Place Where You Live by IRM. That's another great example. How many people have stopped to think about what's being said there? But in the one I just did, I took a line out of Crazy Train that I doubt most people will even realize came out of Crazy Train. That line is, one person conditioned to rule and control, the media sells it, and you live the role. And I do this over and over and over, trying to show that not only have you been told the truth a million times by the entertainment industry, by the opposition, you've been trained not to recognize that it's anything more than entertainment. And that is because you've given away your common sense. Common sense dictates that if you hear lyrics in a song, you should probably say, well, wait a minute, what are they saying here? Right? I mean, that's the common sense approach, I think.
Or what are they meaning?
Exactly.
Deeper. But it's all ear candy.
The reaction generally is, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist.
See, but it doesn't matter because that language was built in as a defense mechanism for the system. You see, anything's a conspiracy theory. These things don't matter. The minds are what matters. And being called a conspiracy theorist or falling for that is to be sucked back by the details. Again, I don't give a damn what anyone calls me. It has no bearing on what I'm going to think. And I've already made my mind up that I'm going to be the best example I can be as a human being to help other people see what I know that I can see. Absolutely. And I'm not going to fight with them. I'm not going to argue if they don't agree with me. Maybe they're not ready. I'm not going to try to force any mind. I'm simply going to light my light and walk. And hopefully some people will follow that.
I love that. Light my light.
That's the main idea.
No, I love that. That's great. That's kind of always been my philosophy too. I may not necessarily, light a light or be the light, but at the very least I can try to reflect that light and maybe bounce some of that light into some of the darker corners of this place on which we live. I know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, I'm here all the time. You go right ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if I had to venture a guess, I talked with Jason a couple times since the channel was taken down and terminated. And I began to dissect, well, wait a minute. Why? Why did they do it? Is it because of something that I identified? Is it because some particular episode we did? Is it because I said Vegas was fake? And the more I began to take it apart, the more my adult mind began to tell me that it's none of those things. The reason they didn't want my voice is because of the way I'm teaching people to think about things. I just posted on Twitter today, I'm not always right. You better be challenging every word out of my mouth. I'm just a person. I'm not always right, but I am constantly challenging. And when you try to help people get back to common sense and you use nature as a benchmark for what reality actually is, not a freaking black hole, a theoretical black hole that doesn't exist, that's nothing to base decision making on, or reality or a belief system. But if you go outside and there's a tree and there's a bird and there's a lake, that is something to base a belief system on. That is reality. You could walk over and get in that lake. You could drink that water. You could touch that tree. And if that tree teaches you something, there's no lie in it. If you learn something from a bird, there's no lie in it. And then when you couple that with common sense, I think the real problem they had with me was going at things in this way, if I had to guess.
I think you're absolutely right. I think people have forgotten how to critically analyze the evidence around them, the reality around them. And right. It's so important to bring it back to empirical and zetetic is what I like to call it. Observations that, cannot, and common sense, like you say. People are just wandering roads of speculation and theorizing, and yeah, it's a dangerous path. I think you're on the right one.
I think it's the many paths you're on. To be honest with you, Crow, I've signed up to the podcast to listen to the Zero stuff recently, and the thing that I've from listening to you that I've gained is the number of fields that you're sticking your nose in, and I think that's where I don't think the system has a problem with anybody pottering around any little field, but what you are doing is I think coherently putting stuff together. And I think, like me, you're a bit of a fan of flamenco as well. And I think there's a
well, I will add this. You see, what you come to realize, the average person who is trying to become aware, and I don't really use the word awake. I don't think I know anybody that's awake. I'm certainly not awake. I'm aware. If I consider that if I was awake, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because I'd probably be figuring out how not to come back here again. These kinds of ideas. My point is this, is after about a year of training your mind to stop believing in things and throwing everything out and starting clean again, even not accepting that 1 and 1 is 2 until you reevaluate it. That basic is what we're talking. And it seems a simple thing, but it really isn't. It's a very damn difficult thing, because a human being gets comfortable with things and they always just want to go back to what's easy, what they're used to. It's kind of like always taking back that girlfriend you shouldn't be with, but you're going to do it anyhow because, it's easy. And even though you're not good for each other, you're still both going to do it. My point is,
path of least resistance.
It's the story of my life.
You come to a point of challenging things where you begin to realize there's no difference in any of it. You see, the Vegas event is not different than Einstein. It's just not. Not for an adult mind. For a person who's learned to step 1,000 paces back to see a whole tree, instead of pulling a leaf at a time, trying to figure out what the damn tree looks like, looking at the tree's leaves or the details, all these things become the same. You have an adult higher mind that you were born with, and it does have the ability to hear the ring of truth. And when you evaluate a thing in this way, after you've trained yourself back to reality, which usually takes about a year, if I have to guess just a random time, you will quickly see that anything you look at in this way pretty regularly will tell you is the ring of truth in this. If you understand quickly, I don't know how to describe it. It's like being lied to by a child. I always use that example. The child lied. Maybe you can't explain it to the adult next to you, but you don't have to question. You've been lied to. It's that kind of an experience. So you hear that the ring of truth is not in a thing, but then you stop. You don't go looking for the details. Well, how many ambulances were there? Where were all the hospitals these people were taken to? How many people got shot? What caliber was the gun? What about this YouTube video? All these things that are where the devil lives, the detail lives, the devil lives in the details. Throw these aside and understand that you already know the ring of truth is not in it. And when you start to train yourself back to there, I don't think there's many things that come in front of me anymore that within the first few seconds, have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to end up understanding about it.
Wow. That was a lot. I just wanted to add, for me personally, I found that we've had decades of programming against it, to rely on technology, to rely on the experts. The 80s, and especially the school system I was brought up in, really played up that lean to the experts and trust the experts field. So that took a lot to overcome, and I wonder if my trauma or being in an accident or being open to certain things allows me to go back to the basics, because we're smarter on a basic feel level, whether it's the Holy Spirit, whether it's intuition guiding you, than the world portrays us to be consistently. They make you feel like you're less than, when in actuality, if you do use those senses, those core senses, sight, sound, feeling, your gut, that's all you really need. So yeah, I don't know, I went a little long there, but
I think I would add a caveat there. You've got to be careful with your senses. You know, we just covered this recently. There's an idea in some of the Eastern traditions, some of the sects of Buddhism and other places, where the senses are the main problem that can lead you astray. The idea of, you know, that I got led astray, that damn rose was so beautifully red that it led me astray. This is what I would say. Yes, you have to use those senses, but you see, you can't get drug into the details. You just can't. The details will never tell you a thing that matters. What will tell you a thing that matters is stepping back and evaluating at an adult level a whole situation and quickly determining, is the ring of truth here? Everyone can hear it once they've gotten back to be. It's like, you got to train yourself to it. You know, everybody can do it now. They just don't understand. It's like getting a gut feeling that you don't listen to. And then later thinking, man, I had a gut feeling and I should have listened to that. And then the next time it happens, the same thing happens. And you think, man, that's the second time I really should have listened to my gut. It's not quite like that, but it's a sense of things that cannot lie to you. It's like the sky is blue. No one can come up and tell me the sky is green. I know better. It's like that. So I would just point out that you've got to be careful with your senses, because the details go straight for your senses, man. When they tell you people have been slaughtered and they show you pictures of blood, those are sense deceptions. Your eyes and your feelings and your emotions and your nostalgia and all these things are going to get drug into that dark damn alley. So I would just point that out.
Yeah, but once, and Rob will tell you, hey, Rob, once you get popped, once your cherries bust, if whether it's 9/11, whether it's Boston, whether it was Denver, Sandy Hoax, any of these events, even politicians lying, NASA faking a couple of the missions, that leads me to believe the whole thing's false. All of the elite commerce scams and the banking industry and the frauds. Once you have one that you sink your teeth into and you actually see, it is, like you say, it becomes autonomous. You see it right away. Right away.
What I find, James, is Boston was massive for me, and Sandy Hook, but we don't have anything to that extent in my eyes. Or maybe we just throw them away now because they're so thick and fast. We don't look into them as much as because I spent a good year on Boston.
I was going to say that, man. That's it.
And they. You don't spend as much time, like even Las Vegas, you know, it was a week. You know, you have a look at a few things for a week and then it's just passed off.
Yeah, and I think that's what Crrow's saying is
3 or 4 years for 9/11 for me, and then Boston, then Sandy Hook. It should have been Sandy Hook, then Boston. I think should have been the order, but I sort of saw Sandy Hook through Boston. But
so
there was just so much to see. Yeah,
I can address that. You know how I came to Boston. My wife, and we didn't watch TV. I think we were looking for weather because I forget whether it was hot or cold. I think it was getting ready to be cold in San Diego. It was December, wasn't it? No, I don't remember. For some reason, she was clicking through the channels, and I saw...
Whatever Patriots Day is.
Okay, so I saw the explosion, and she clicked... It just stopped on that channel. I saw the explosion, and she clicked by, and I said, man, another false flag attack. And my wife looked at me and said, how did you know that was fake? And I looked at her like, well, how the hell did you know it wasn't? And how couldn't you, why wouldn't you understand that it's fake? When people began to ask me, that's when I started to really think about how can I explain, how did I know that was fake? And so as I described what I just described a few minutes ago, still some people, that's not enough. So I started saying this. How is it that every person who wasn't in the military didn't understand that was fake instantly because it was just a smoke bomb? You were told there was shrapnel, people's legs got ripped off, yet none of the flags that were right there were shredded. But when you see that bomb, anyone in the military understands that's not a real explosion. Anyone who's thrown a hand grenade knows how horrific a real explosion is. To the point where when you're throwing a hand grenade, you're wondering to yourself, in the real world, could I throw this thing far enough from myself to be out of the injury zone? And when it happens, it is so violent and percussive and just gnarly, no other way to describe it. You never forget, if you're an adult, instead of letting your eyes, your senses draw you into this stagecraft that's being put in front of you, using your adult mind to understand that, you know what, an M80 is a bigger explosion than they just showed me. So it took me 5 seconds on that one. On Vegas, I don't even watch the news. On Vegas, people were coming unglued in my forum, so I went and looked for 3 minutes when I came back and said, yes, as I told you earlier, not having looked at it, it was fake. Now I can tell you absolutely that there is nothing real about this. But anyhow, I think I interrupt you, and I should probably have my second drink by now.
I was going to say with Boston, did you notice just as the explosion happened, all the flags started waving? Did you notice that? It was like the. It might have been a coincidence. Once again, might have been a coincidence.
The wind machine to push the smoke out.
That's what I think. Yeah, I think.
But you see, my mind had already gone beyond that, where I knew that was the planned media shot. So every flag in view was in the game, wasn't it? In one way, shape, or more. All those national flags had information to communicate. So
it would have been more beneficial for them, I think, if they let the smoke gather around for a little bit longer, because the smoke was gone pretty clear quickly, and it was clear to see from the photos from the 2 vantage points in behind the building there that that there was people mucking around with the scene, and people that should have been injured weren't. And I mean, it was probably
good images of that.
Yeah, for us it was. Yeah, for us
on those images, Crow. Like you were saying earlier, that you thought that, and I agree, that 9/11 was designed to be uncovered some time down the line. It's with Boston bombings. I mean, within a couple of days, they had massively high definition photos showing, prime people with rucksacks on and this sort of thing that was the key to showing that this was an absolute fraud. So my question is, again, I just wanted to explore this notion that we are being set up. These are designed to come out. We're meant to see this chaos.
Well, I think there's a little bit of hubris in what you're pointing out too, because of the recent ones that were just so shoddy, like Sandy Hook, which I don't think that's one of the most shoddy, big events they've done. But in Boston, like you said, within a very short period of time, there was flat out photographic evidence proving that they were spraying the blood around, doing any number of things, showing amputees sitting there waiting for their act to start, people pointing out that if you get your leg blown off, you bleed out in a minute and a half. Here he is 5 minutes after the fact getting wheeled down the street. Just all the nonsense that clearly showed. But you see here,
the dummy said Pulse.
Here's the point, though. So how many people saw that, and how many people saw the evening news? This is where the hubris comes in, where these bastards, these kind of underhanded, hide in the dark, lie to your mom bastards that do this stuff. No, when we put our news anchor on tonight, in every city in America, then on the national news, then on the cable news, we're going to hit 400 million minds. That's how many minds we're going to hit. In this numbers game, our supercomputers already know that the outcome to a 98% certainty is that 80% of everyone will be convinced this is a real thing. So we don't give a damn that some dude got pictures, and that these conspiracy theorists, by the way, we'll label them that to make them look crazy, a few thousand, 10,000, even 100,000, maybe even 200,000 people saw the proof that this was BS, but it can't hold a candle to the 400 million we're going to hit at the 6 o'clock news. you know?
Yeah.
But Crow and Rob, let me ask you guys, just in your theory, because we've actually done it, like we now can tell, so we don't have to spend days on the false flags. How do you keep yourself sharp to not miss stuff? Because if you're always just doing that quick gut assumption or ringing for the truth, as you say, I don't want to run the risk of judging an event that is real and saying,
well,
"Oh,
let me cure you.
false,
Stop
it's
right
false."
there. Let me.
So how
let
do
me
we
help
keep ourselves sharp?
Let's cure you right now of that disease. Our world is under a full frontal press for world domination. That's what these false flags are about. That's what 9/11's about. That's what the censorship online is about. We're headed for 1984 here, guys. So throw it the hell out of your mind. I would rather call 5 events that were real false and get every other one of them right than to sit there and willy-nilly around while this crap goes on in our world. And to be honest with you, you don't have to worry about missing 5 and getting it wrong, because you know what? Our media is here for one thing. So even if there is a kernel of truth in whatever the hell they're reporting, it is surrounded by so many layers of agenda that calling it BS on the face of it insulates you from any supposed guilt you might have. That's the truth of things. The people who are doing the people who are doing this to you have no freaking concern for you, your children, your mother, your cousin, the people you've loved in your life. So I think you need to shed the idea that you're worried about hurting someone's feelings in case you get it wrong. And besides that, you ain't never going to get it wrong, because when CNN puts something out, it's bullshit.
It's all controlled anyways.
What annoys me the most is when I sit in my lunchroom and there's someone disagreeing with me. So I get the photos of Boston, and I get the videos of people who are standing right beside the blast, who are walking around fine, walking around, checking everyone out, and then suddenly they're in a wheelchair. Half an hour later, they're getting wheeled into the medical tent or back of an ambulance. And they, how can you think that that's a real event if that's happening?
Well, you want
I get wild. I get absolutely wild. I think maybe they're doing it to wild me up, because they know how passionate I am when I talk about this stuff.
Nostalgia and emotion, man. Nostalgia and emotion are some of the biggest programming tools, because since the greatest generation, those people born before the advent of TV, probably grandmothers or great-grandmothers for people listening, they were going to be the hardest generation to socially program, because mass media had not been brought online yet. What they've done in these 3 generations is lowered adults into infantile mindsets. That's how they classify them, not me. That's how they are classifying the adult American mindset, as infantile and animalistic. The reason is because they're going to play on your emotions. You see, if they can kick a puppy on camera, they know they're going to get an emotional response. That is the first ingredient for lesser magic, to get emotion high. The only other thing they got to do is cast their spell. When you get emotion high and you cast a spell behind it and you have your social programming in place, those things are pretty effective. But let me tell you, the biggest tell of all time, and unfortunately this tell won't happen until a year after an event, but anytime Hollywood comes along with their Mark Wahlberg, freaking, A-list actors, and they do their oil spill in the Gulf movie.
Thank you.
Their guy who lost a leg in the Boston bombing movie, their 9/11 bullshit movie, they are proving to you that not only are these things false, but they are now going to use Hollywood to cement the memory they want you to have, and then to change the narrative into what they want it to be as time moves on. In other words, Hollywood becomes the actual history society remembers, because who the hell is going to read a history book about the day 9/11 happened?
There's consent there too, right, Crow? You were alluding to, and I think, Walt, you wanted to say something too. It's consent. They tell you, and they kind of like they've got to tell you what they're doing.
Tacit permission, yep.
There's a new show just started on Netflix, and it's about a film crew that goes around probably New York City, I'd say, and just goes to accident scenes and films people, badly hurt and crying and despaired. And he said, I do this because that's what people want to see. he goes, I'd rather film kids with little puppies and running around the backyard, but that's not what sells. This is what sells. People's
lying
despair,
to you. He's lying.
Yeah, I know. I didn't agree.
Yeah, here's what they're really doing. I can actually tell you the name of what they're doing. It's called trauma programming.
Trauma-based mind control.
Yeah, what the television does to the human mind, to a habitual TV watcher, it makes one hemisphere become more active than it should be, and then your higher mind, like your neocortex, where decisions are made and reality is deducible, that shuts down, and you go into what's called your reptilian mind or your lower mind. The lower mind cannot distinguish from reality. So the experience of a person in that mindset in front of their television is they begin to feel as if what they're watching, they are living. So when they show you trauma-based television like that over and over, they've actually proven that the person observing it, the television watcher, is suffering levels of trauma from that. This is just one of many other ways to program. And the truth of it is, you could put 10 programs in a lineup of what people might want to see and add the trauma programming into it, and you would find that it would be a real minority of people who chose the trauma programming. This is all from the Tavistock research. This is all textbook lowering of the human mind by media. To go out and film misery like that is playing into the idea that America is circling the drain right now. We can all go back to, say, the 50s, when America was the greatest thing since, white bread. Can-do country, no one could beat it, makes the best stuff, and the media and the movies are reflecting this idea. Well, we're all the way up to where we are now, and the movies and media are reflecting the exact opposite. It's exactly that Ozzy Osbourne quote that I just read to you out of Crazy Train. The media sells it, and we play the role. There's no arguing it at this point, because we can dissect it well enough to demonstrate what's being done.
Well, that's interesting, because I was listening to your podcast today. It was number 30, I think, and it was about the Tavistock Institute. I think it's quite important to point out to anyone that's listening, because we keep saying the word they. I mean, there is actually organizations in place that are openly engaging in this, that this isn't random. You're not talking out your ass, basically. The Tavistock Institute is and has been formulating how to control us and how to manipulate us for years now, isn't it? So the Tavistock is a very interesting thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about them?
It's as simple as the order of the news, isn't it? Where they'll get an emotion to control you and then plant something for you to believe. It's...
Well, I've used this example about news for people who want to start to try to become aware of a reality-based existence and not be so tied up in this illusion of herd animal mentality that most of us are stuck in. You live in a local community. If you went out in that community for a solid week in your car and put in an 8-hour day driving all around your local community, how often would you see death, misery, a fire, a car accident, a murder, a rape, a robbery? So you do this for a solid week. Now go home after you do your solid week of research, 8 hours a day, driving around your community like a patrol car, and watch your news. Every night, that news will be doing its damnedest to convince you that 3 houses burned down, there was a robbery at 2 liquor stores, 3 people got knifed, a poor girl got raped, puppies were killed in a house fire. This is what the news does, and it's demonstrable. But to get back to Tavistock, Tavistock is not alone in this world. There are people that precede the turn of the 20th century back into the 1800s, like the Frankfurt School, who are actually partners of Tavistock now. All these places hovered around the royal families or the elite circles, and they based a lot of their work on 2 of the most damaging people I can think of right now, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. 2 people who figured out how to hack the human mind. A lot of what they do is based on these things, and it's what they do. They engineer society, and out of these groups, like as an example, Sigmund Freud's double nephew, Edward Bernays, created PR, public relations. He invented it. So modern day marketing, public relations, which is almost in every corporation.
He's the master of it, Brene. Yeah.
Right. These are the direct social engineers that brought us these things, and they've made it mainstream. What corporation doesn't either hire or have on board public relations? And things like Madison Avenue in New York, well, people might ask, those are marketing guys. Well, nonsense. They've shaped your whole life. Did you know that Christmas was invented by Madison Avenue? I'm not making this up. It doesn't have anything to do with religion. Nothing at all to do.
Chocolates, and Valentine's Day was an invention by Cadbury.
Of course, but you see, this invention is going to dictate what you do every December till the day you drop. And even if you choose not to participate, the society you live within is participating. So you can see the kind of overarching, far-reaching effects that social programming can have. In this case,
I like to follow it a little deeper, Crow, because then just what you said, that system, they're equipping agents like, I remember Alice Bailey, Helena Blavatsky, they're equipping those people with all of this knowledge and power like Jung and Freud, and then using it to form what they play and we take.
Right.
Crow, can I ask a question then? I mean, obviously,
sure.
You know, I agree with that. We're all aware of that. And we've discussed in the past Christmas, sorts of things. How do you then turn that around so that your awareness of it, you have to participate? How do you turn it into an empowerment then?
So be more specific, please. Okay,
so you said there Christmas, for example. You can't get away from it, is the point you're getting alluding to. It's the energy of it is all around you. Is there a way that you could?
Yes. Yeah, there's a way to get away from it. I don't celebrate Christmas, which isn't wholly true. I have older people in my family. We put up a small tree. I tell people, don't buy me anything. I don't want things. I'm not participating in the materialism of this. I'm not buying into the idea that a whole economy depends on how much crap is sold at this point. And I don't participate. And while I may show up for a Christmas meal, I moderate what I do. Like yesterday was Thanksgiving. Guess what I didn't eat? Turkey. You know why? I'm not 100% vegetarian. I'm as close as I could be, but I do eat chicken from time to time, and I do eat fish from time to time. But I will never participate in Thanksgiving because it's the wholesale slaughter of endless turkeys simply because someone made up a thing. So we all act like a herd mentality of animals. We all belly up to the bar on that magic Thursday in November every year. We take a turkey that's been killed for us and we eat it. And don't get me wrong here. If you choose to make that choice, that's fine. But what I do is I decided that, wait a minute, if I was a true higher-minded individual that grew up in nature, what would I be doing this time? You know, I'd have dinner, certainly, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be eating a turkey. And since I understand the idea of how we got this, I don't agree with it. So I just won't participate. You can't switch the mind of another. Like, I can't go upstairs and say to my sister, man, what the hell's the matter with you? Why are you eating turkey? That's not my choice to make. If she wants to eat the turkey, that's cool. It's her choice. But what I am doing is saying, this is not important to me. I'm going to light my light. I'm going to go do what I do. And maybe someone will recognize there's value there. Truly, if there is value, someone will recognize it. If I'm just deluding myself, then I'll be standing there with a light in there that no one follows, I guess. But you see, this is the way of things. We can change our own minds. That's the only thing we really can change. If we do a good enough job of demonstrating the value and why we're changing our minds, then typically other people will take an interest, and then their mind will change. This is how every idea since the beginning of time has ever come to be. It's how we got the turkeys. You see, someone said, hey, man, look at this great idea. We're going to celebrate this day of thanks by having turkeys. And these other minds around that mind said, hey, that's a pretty good idea. Okay, we're going to have turkey too. You see? So there's always a way to go and try to set a new standard. There's no guarantee that will work, but why wouldn't you try? Every idea in the history of the world has come to in the same way. One person did a thing, and if they demonstrated it well enough, other people wanted to take part. I guess that's what I can say.
And I think the turkey generally comes with a side helping of Kool-Aid as well, doesn't it?
In Jonestown, it did.
Or a syringe. I think they use syringes in Jonestown too. For those that weren't quite willing to drink the Kool-Aid, they got it.
And
one
Hollywood,
way or the other.
and Hollywood stagecraft with a U.S. senator and a director.
So yeah, I don't really watch like my local news or national news. I watch Netflix and stuff with my girlfriend when I try to relax, but not so much anything on my actual broadcast television. But I'm assuming that the news is still probably set up pretty much the same way, where it's got the newscaster taking up about a third of the screen, 2/3 for hopefully some sort of motion graphic talking about what's coming out of his mouth, probably some scroll bar down at the bottom, maybe 2 or 3 at this point, some time, some temperature, probably a station ID somewhere, and then you have the newscaster droning on in this very strange cadence. Right, so again, what you have is just classic mind control. You just overwhelm the brain and then make your subconscious try to focus on this odd cadence in the language, and pretty soon you're just the drooling idiot listening to believing whatever words come spilling out of this asshat's mouth.
Go watch the graphics. There's always a spinning circle, a spirally thing, a classic hypnotic technique to get you into that mind state.
Absolutely. America's Funniest Video does it. So many of the places do it. But here's the thing. We broke down how news is delivered in one of the episodes. I think it might have been a Tavistock episode. On average, in a 30-minute segment, you could get somewhere between 30 and 40 news pieces delivered to you, which means that the average news piece is brought to you in 30 seconds to a minute and 15. Quite often, when it's delivered to you, there will be 2 sentences. Sometimes in those 2 sentences, they're using 10 words or less, and all of the language is super simplistic. And the reason for that is because there is an actual stated documented push to use media and other sources of entertainment to reduce the English language down to 80 commonly used words and 250 overarching words that make up the entirety of the language. So those are things that you can observe about the news. And I would point out, things like Dante's Inferno, that book was credited with saving the higher-minded ideals held in Italian. Later on, it was done in English with the Canterbury Tales, and then again in Spanish or one of the Latin-based languages with Don Quixote.
Don Quixote, right?
Yeah, so these were recognized. It was all started with Dante's Inferno as recognizing. Someone recognized. I don't remember the whole story, that they were losing the higher-minded possibilities in the society as language was being dismantled. So that actual tome was written to preserve the quality of the language, to preserve the higher-minded ideals. So that there's a whole side of media there where they're literally trying to lower the higher-minded ideals of a society by limiting the language down to ridiculously few nouns and verbs. And if you listen to the news, it's quite often, the president did this today and it was bad.
I think if they have their way, with things like Twitter and texting on your phone and things, they'll have it down to 80 characters, not 80 words.
Good point.
I think that goes to the...
Hey, man, we've gone just about an hour. Do we get a potty break on this train ride?
Absolutely, sir.
You know what? We absolutely
All right, well, I'm going to mute out and take about 4 minutes.
In about 4 minutes. That sounds great. We usually take about a 5 to 7 minute break, just enough for everybody to go hit the head and grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever it is Adam's taking to try to feel better these days.
Get you some golden milk, my friend.
I'll have to call
Turmeric,
it quits, guys.
golden milk.
Sorry.
Hey, I just had a quick question for you, Walt. Was that the alpha state when you and Crow were just talking about putting you in it?
That's the aim. That is the wave they put out through the signal. It's coming to you through your eyes, your ears. It is putting you into a state of acceptance, almost dreamlike.
Okay.
Take it easy, Rob.
And that'll kind of segue us to the 5G, I imagine.
Very busy day today. So.
All right, brother. Love you, Rob. Glad that you're here, man.
Speak soon, Rob.
All right, Josh, we going to break?
Yeah, we are.
Yep, we'll go to break here just a little bit. I want to tell
For
Rob
everybody
goodbye.
that's out there, we appreciate you guys being here, and you're here every week. The ones that are, the ones who didn't make it, we'll see you down the road when you listen to it
on the backside. But man, we thank you all for being here every week. We love you guys, and it's why we do this.
Just a bit of housekeeping. Of course, we are talking to Crrow777, and his website is www.Crrow777radio.com. Get over there, become a member. You get the first hour free. There's no login. There you go. How was that, Crow?
Paid. That was amazing, bro. That was beautiful.
That's the most work John's put in a while.
On Twitter at Crrow with CRROW777. So check him out there on Twitter as well. You can find us crazy nuts loose somewhere roaming around the Twitterverse, usually at some point during the day.
And if people have got questions in chat, they put it in all caps or something. If we get to a point where we can pop over to chat and ask some questions. Is that how it works?
Sounds like a plan.
Hey,
because we were initially meant to be hosting Stan, 360 Man, and a couple of others on here, but Skype seems to be playing absolute silly buggers this week, and I'm having trouble. Rob,
did you get the update? Yeah, did you get the update?
Oh, did I miss an update?
I had one that popped through like between Tuesday's show and Friday's show that we do on TFR, so I don't know if it's hit you guys yet or not, but I definitely had one.
I don't know, because I'm working on some platform.
A bit. Do I sound okay? Is it still choppy?
Sounds fine, yeah. You sound fine, yeah.
Sound good, man.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you guys after the break. Let's do this.
All right, Adam.
Yeah, where's... Okay.
John, everybody, I guess we're going to go ahead. Yeah, I was going to do a little bit of mea culpa here for staying in series because it was totally my fault. We were on Google Hangouts. Our favorite little Flat Earth troll likes to come in and do his little
Timmy's tissue
time and play with us. So we've been trying to avoid Google Hangouts as much as possible and trying to stick to Skype. I forgot to even let Stan know or Series know or anybody know, and I'm just going about my life, la-di-da. Why should my life affect anyone else, right? Well, here it is. So my biggest apology, Stan. I would have loved to have gotten you on to see what you had to present. And it sucks that all your 360 stuff was on one computer while your Skype was on the other. Leave it to me to choose Skype and make it so. But we will get you on. I am very interested to see what you guys have found.
I know we were plugging you this morning, man. So we sorry about the fumble.
It's just my fault. That's my fault. Leave it to me to muck something up every week. So unfortunately, it was just you this time, staying in series. So I apologize. I don't know what else to say.
In the meantime, if they can get on Skype, then they're more than welcome.
Absolutely.
Right, I'll take a share of the blame. Poor communication. I didn't think I asked Dan lots of questions. The format wasn't one, so apologies, guys. I forgot to mention we don't use it, or aren't using it at the moment because of little Timmy.
Timmy's tissue time.
We need a sample of that one there.
Oh, you know what? I should.
Josh, come on. Are we going to break or what?
I know we're
guys haven't gone to break.
Yeah, come on.
I told
Give
you.
us some
It
music,
takes
man.
time.
How much
Get
air
it
do we
together.
have to
For
kill
some
here?
reason.
Crow will be
Come
back,
on.
and we'll still be sitting here yapping.
Bloody butt.
This is
Can
why
you
I
guys
call
hear
it.
me? Am I back?
Yeah,
No,
you-
we're trying to go to break. Josh won't cut us out of here.
Yeah,
man.
so am
He likes
I.
it
I'm
too
trying to
much.
go to
Sorry,
break.
man. You guys
10
left
minutes.
your window. I already peed.
I know. I told him that. Crow's gonna be back, and we'll have to stay on. I'll be tied the knot here. I'm going. I'll be back.
Time for another beer, Crow.
Yeah, I kind of like doing this show, man. It's nice to do kind of an after-hours show. I'm so tired of having to be on all the time,
Yeah.
It's just kind of nice to come with some guys and talk about stuff.
Well, that's what we do.
Well, we pretty much talk about anything here. Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad you're relaxed enough to really just kind of kick back, because that's really what I was hoping for. I really hoped to get a more relaxed. I mean, as much as I love the On Crow, because it's great to listen to, I was really looking forward to seeing that other side. Just a really more relaxed. Like to hear that curse word drop now and again. type of crow. Yeah, I really dig it. I want to thanks
Can
again
I
for
ask,
coming on.
Crow, are you a smoker? Are you a toker? Sorry.
I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I did nearly every drug a person. Well, that's not true. I never did heroin or things like that. But the 60s and 70s drugs.
Yeah.
When I went into the Marine Corps in the 80s, I had already kind of started clean up my act a bit. And when I got back out of the Marine Corps, by then pot was already rocket fuel compared to what it had been. And I just didn't go back because I needed to think. And now, if I smoke pot, I'll sit there and stare at the bottom of my foot for 6 hours. It's too much, and it interferes. But more so, the thing about pot for me now is I can see through the veil too clearly, and it is overwhelming. I can't cope. Sometimes, a few times in the past, maybe 6 years, I've taken one hit off the kind of rocket fuel pot they have now, and I get this vision through the veil that is just more than I care to see.
Yeah, no, I can understand. It was just like I said, I was listening back to podcast 30, and it's quite. I'll shut up.
No, you go ahead.
You sound very relaxed. Put it that way.
They're playing John's song. There you go. We can have a break.
Thank God.
It's a few minutes. It's like almost 4-minute song. We'll play it and at least give Crow a chance to not listen to us for a little bit, if anything else. Well, we'll call it a short break. We usually go on for a little bit longer, but F it, we got better things to do.
Hey, we're here. We got stuff to do.
Hell yeah. Who's typing?
I believe it might be Crow.
Fast and Furious.
Oh, sorry guys, are we back?
Yes, sir.
Are you
welcome
kidding?
back.
We come and go without a word. We're
Put
the
down the crack
Warn
pipe,
you.
step away from the keyboard.
I guess it's our silent trigger, the end of the song.
yeah. I knew it was nobody
Earlier,
in.
by the way, Crow, you had a little Freudian slip when you said Lesser Maggot. So that is a new band name. I call it. Sorry, mine.
I thought it was an apt
Instead
description.
of-
No, but I actually should have pointed out. As I go out to go take a leak, I'm thinking, I just bagged pretty hard on Thanksgiving. The whole point of what I said about Thanksgiving is it's the idea of herd mentality. If you go through a year and then you come together with everyone else in the country to do the exact same act, my point here is that's been programmed into you. As an individual human being, you probably wouldn't be doing those things. It was not my intent to bag on the idea of Thanksgiving. It was my intent to kind of point out how I try to separate myself from the social
Amen.
programming.
Hate the sin, not the sinner. I always say it. Hate the sin, not the sinner.
And I think we all have our own take on these holidays on our little group here. So personally, you haven't stepped on any toes here, and our listeners have heard us say probably a lot worse about some of these pagan holidays.
I've
So-
been-
How about if
called-
we all sing Wahoo Dory now, okay?
Here we go.
Wahoo Dory.
I've been called a miserable bastard by Adam because I bar humbug about Christmas and birthdays and Mother's Day and Divorced Father's Day and all this other nonsense they sell cards for over here. So yeah, I'm with you.
In a loving way, John. Though I said it, it was.
Yeah, I know.
Well, things like
Amen.
Christmas are actually hiding important parts of the year because everyone's so wrapped up in Christmas they don't understand that they've reached the winter solstice. And the solstices and equinoxes are the only true division of time down here. So there's all that to consider. But that's like a whole other conversation.
P.S. You
Um,
said wrapped up.
And the sun dying for 3
Christmas.
days, rising again. And there's a lot in it, isn't there?
Don't give away
that
the
was-
stagecraft.
That was probably what I was more alluding to, actually, Crow, in terms of that maybe recognition of other things, but while still sharing in the goodwill and humanity of the season, but maybe seeing a bit deeper. And for me, that's what I try to do is turn it into a positive as opposed to being offended by the commercialism and the likes. It's more a matter of, I don't go mad, do you know what I mean? I still buy gifts for loved ones, but it's not a engagement in the full commercial machine. But
Right.
and I'm not religious either, so it's more a time of joy and happiness. And for example, in my shop, I'll put mince pies out every day. Do you know what I mean? For December, it's. Do you know what I
Are
mean?
you
I'm just
are you
spreading
talking
a
about
little
mince
happiness.
meat? You're talking about a mince meat pie, right? That's old school in the United States.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, sweet mince meat, not like beef.
Yeah,
Same.
that's old school, man. That my dad's generation was all about mincemeat pies. He used to turn me on to them, and I couldn't figure. I didn't get it when I was a kid. I understand it a lot more. He taught me a lot of things. He actually roasted chestnuts on an open fire to show me what that was all about.
Tasty
Wow,
stuff.
that's dedication. That's
No
awesome.
kidding.
So what is it about Christmas? Since we're on the subject, I mean, it's the thing about bringing the tree into the house and lighting the candles and the
Saturn
Amanita
worship.
muscaria,
Well, that's
red and white
probably
mushrooms.
that's probably how they implemented it, right? So they took the old pagan traditions that understood they were at the equinox, and they slowly wrapped it over into the new paradigm, which was being run by the Catholic Church, and that's kind of how they shifted it over. That's my guess, anyhow, why we have these pagan leftovers into the new, more religious traditions. But what it's actually doing is separating people from the solstice. And most people think that's a pagan thing, and it's all these. It's not, man. It's the sun is what lights our world. It's what allows us to grow things. When it gets to springtime, all the animals will have babies. That's all about the sun. And these points are marked at 4 times, and that is true time. Unfortunately, we've all been pulled into artificial time. Jason and I did a show on that too, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I set out to demonstrate that our every portion of our life is an artificial construct. So I wanted to take time apart. And so we started by demonstrating how the time zones were implemented. And I pointed out that there's one time zone, I think it's Central if I remember, in the United States. If you were to stand on like the western edge of the time zone and then put another guy on the eastern edge of the time zone, those dudes would be somewhere between 800 and 1,000 miles apart. But if they both look at their wristwatch, same time. So it kind of illustrates the artificial nature of getting away from looking up and saying, hey, man, the sun's as high as it's going to be today. It's noon, you know, and making fun of it.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, what about the the British summertime, the daylight savings, and like you say, why they call it the fall and all this sort of thing? I mean, it all ties in, doesn't it?
Of course, because the people who are the chess piece movers, all of us being the chess pieces, they understand the older ways. They've separated, it's the same idea of why places like the Catholic Church, or you could even use China in this example. China took apart Tibet for the very same reason, because they had a culture there that was based in the older, I guess what we could call alchemical ideas, just a science based in nature, confined to nature, concerned with nature, demonstrated by nature. That's why Tibet was taken apart. Because you see, those systems can take you all the way. It's been demonstrated that they can take you all the way. So, I guess that's how I would answer that. All these things, daylight savings time is just another part of it. The big tell with daylight savings time is that it's done at the equinoxes. So here's these important points of the year, and of course they're going to jack your clock back or forward 1 hour, which is 1/24th of a day. I used what was that quote I used? Supposed Indian chief, who knows if that's correct, said only a white man would cut a foot off the bottom of a blanket, sew it to the top of a blanket, and think he'd lengthened something. And that's a one-to-one allegory for daylight savings time.
Yeah.
Walt and I covered this morning over on Truth Frequency Radio a little bit about Christmas and sort of the holidays, and I still stand by it, other than the cesarean section or circumcision, that Christmas is still one of the biggest trauma-based mind control things we do to children. Just the introduction of magic.
It's funny you mentioned circumcision. I'm thinking about doing a show later on that. There's all this kind of really older research that shows that's the feminine aspect of maleness. And so what they're removing is the feminine aspect of male. And so much of the system is out of balance because we've become such a masculine world, right? The kind of feminine side of things is not balancing out us crazy dudes that always got to be going to war or doing something else crazy. We need that feminine, to balance us out.
That's
yeah, but it's a trip. There's a whole thing about the foreskin and how we got that whole thing. But anyhow, I guess we don't need to talk penises in this episode.
That'll be another show.
Yeah, we got plenty of dicks here as it is.
Yeah. It's in the Bible, as far as I know. There's something mentioned about it anyway in the Bible. But circumcisions and cesareans, was it?
Yeah. Welcome to the Bible. By the way, God made part of you that's not good. We're going to cut that part off.
Which is, again, just programming.
I think what God
You'll
meant
never
to say
be good
here
enough.
was...
You were inherently never good enough. Thanks to Adam and Eve and original sin. That's just the way it is. This is just a physical manifestation. See how unworthy you are? Welcome to your
I
bliss.
would point out that the surface reading of that book, in my view, is meant to not be helpful, but there is so much more encoded in deeper levels, including the old natural ideas, all encoded there. We've done episodes that show the 12 saints of the Catholic tradition were actually encoding the sun in a given month. It's not really arguable. You can demonstrate it to a point where if someone wants to argue it, it's just because they don't want to accept it. And that's not a run at anyone's religion. It's just demonstrating that the Freemasonic ideas were, part and parcel of what the Vatican ended up encoding into religious text.
And you've been talking about this recently, haven't you? I mean, about the common law incorporated, or at least natural law, or God's law, or whatever, incorporated in the Torah and the first 5 books of the New, the first, And can you expand on that? I mean, because we're quite interested in law here as well.
Well,
Absolutely.
Jason's always been real big. You know, he named his stuff Secrets of Saturn. He's been big on the supposed Roman Empire morphing into the Holy Roman Empire, the Vatican. And he's been big into the strawman identity. And we were recently talking basically that the Catholic Church handed us the history that we have in the West of supposed older days through a guy named Scaliger. Most people would recognize him as Josephus. But what they call our chronology in the West is the Scaligerian chronology, which is basically this dude Josephus, who was probably a Jesuit. If he wasn't, he was certainly related to them. People have even made the argument he's a made-up personage. But this is where it came in, and we began to discuss how can you accept any history from this place when they're the people who helped implement the strawman identity, which is attributed probably back to ancient Rome, if there ever was such time. But the inheritors of that would have been the Holy Roman Empire, or, well, there never really was a Holy Roman Empire, the Vatican. And so my point was, if these guys are honest arbiters of information, why are they trying to control us all through a corporate strawman identity that you're never notified exists in the first place, that's given to you at birth? Well, it's given to you at birth now. When I was young, I think my first job was at age 14. So I think I got my social security number at age 14. So that's when the damage was done to me.
Yeah, we got it at 16 over here in the UK. But yeah, exactly like you say. I mean, I think the Roman Empire, if it even existed in the way that we're described, was the start of this and morphed into the Vatican, and the whole birth certificate farce was brought about was in 1666, count the ways, with the Sesta KV Act.
Well, the 1666 is interesting, isn't it? In terms of
and the
when you
Fire of
talk about-
London.
Yeah, isn't there a
records
plague
were
or
burned.
something in that time too? I'm not sure I accept plagues either, guys. I may be taking apart plagues. One thing I noticed about so many of the plague stories is, it killed 1/3 of the world's population, and I'm all, come on. You know what I think is probably correct, and this is going to sound outlandish to people, but I'll say it anyhow. We're in an after-hours show, so I'm not here to prove anything. This may be something I go out later with a little more evidence. I suspect that the physical population of life, so living things, is a static thing. It doesn't decrease or increase by any appreciable amount. I think the whole narrative that population explosion is using all the reasons, I think it's made up. I think we're going to find out that these old encoded ideas in movies where dude gets killed, flash to the moon, baby gets born, is actually a true representation of what happens here. There's a lot to sift through there, but I'm really kind of thinking that since all people started to gravitate towards cities over the last, I don't know, half a century or whatever it's really been, hard to know. I think that's how they're leveraging the idea that population is ever increasing. I don't think it's a true thing, although I will have to go at it in the way that I do to demonstrate it in some way.
That was one of the seeds I planted yesterday during Thanksgiving dinner to my reluctant in-law who's not looking at many rabbit holes anymore. He was talking about something to do with population, and that was one of the things I was talking to him with, just that idea that it's just used to limit our thoughts, our ideas about resources, it's real easy to make people buy something they don't have to buy if they think there's not a whole lot of it around. So,
well, water is going to be the next big thing, and
that
that's
is
going to be
huge.
Yeah, that will be dependent on the idea of global warming, which is
go
fraud.
check into Nestle and what they're doing with water. It's madness.
But of course, all of this comes back to the narrative of scarcity.
Right.
So you've got scarcity of
Supply
land,
and demand.
scarcity of resources, scarcity of, but you have an increasing population that is going out of control. That we've
It's
been told for at least-
unsustainable.
Well, that's how you balance.
Yeah.
That's the magic you're harnessing. That's the energy that you get. You keep that out of balance. It should be remain static, but you throw it off on one side. You kill a bunch of people. You get to harness that energy. I'm just talking out my ass here.
An analogy on that. It might have been you, Crow, because I've been listening to you a lot, but somebody was saying that for the new religion of scientism, the global warming myth is the new original sin, because you're born into this world and you're already killing it and destroying it, and therefore you govern.
Interesting.
Well, it is blamed on people. You know, that's the main thing. They always convince you that you're the problem. I don't remember going at it in that way. I mean, the idea is similar, but I demonstrated that I can prove to myself global warming is fraud, because what you're told is that all these places on coastlines are going underwater, and that by some certain date, this city will have lost all this real estate. Well, as chance would have it, where I am in the East Coast now, first time I ever saw the beach that's down the street from me was when I was about 5 years old. And there is a chain link fence just above the mean high water mark. The reason that matters is because when you happen to have a storm, a big storm, when the moon is full, so the tides will be high, and the tide is high during the storm, all the seaweed gets caught in the fence, which lets you know the water made it that high. But you see, when that happens, the seaweed dries in the fence. It turns into like leather, so it can last for years and years caught in the fence. So you know that, you know, some years ago, the water levels here were, in the last, I would estimate 15 years at least, that water has not hit that fence. So how can global warming be a true thing? The water level would have to be rising, which means when I was 16 and I knew that water had hit the fence, how can it be that it hasn't hit the fence in all that time since if the water level is rising?
Crow, have you looked into sand piracy at all?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
A lot of our technology, well, not just technology, our world exists on sand in ways that most people aren't even aware of. I just watched a video by That Impossible channel, and he's on a beach that he's familiar with, like you're talking about, and he's showing the exact same thing, how these certain rocks on these years ago when I was a kid were this level, and now the beach is way down the beach, you know, the water's way down the beach is really sloped, and he shows some footage from this documentary apparently that's out there that I'm still trying to find about the fact that what they're doing is they're having these offshore dredging machines that are outside the international water line so that they can just basically steal a huge amount of sand, which causes, you know, the whole beach to then wash into the ocean. And yeah, there's definitely signs that that's part of what you're maybe talking about. But the water levels, I'm here in South Louisiana, we've been threatened with, they're washing us away, you know, by design here, basically, with the whole Mississippi flowing and washing us away. But I've been hearing that since I was a kid, and I still go to the same beaches, and they seem to be, the water lines are lower, not higher.
Right. Well, that's what I see here. And as a matter of fact, I do see a steeper beach in some places. But what is disturbing is there's a lot less life. And I attribute that to the farming techniques. The amount of nitrogen in the water and the pollution and the overfishing. I see a lot of people, you know, here in Rhode Island, everybody fishes everywhere, but we see a lot of people taking fish that are way undersized. I used to say stuff to people, but now I just kind of look at them, you know, like they know I'm looking at them, and I'm sitting there looking at them saying, damn, that's a small fish, dude. You know, a lot of times they just throw them back in, but I don't, you know, I used to love to fish. That was one of my things when I was younger. I loved to fish. I haven't fished or taken a lobster or even a clam in, I don't know, 15, close to 20 years. That's not true. I caught one fish when my father was dying because he wanted to have a smoked striped bass. So and it took me a while. It took me a while to catch one big enough to keep, like a month at that particular year. And I finally caught one and I smoked it for him. You know, he only had a few months left to live, so I did. But other than that, I haven't taken any life out of the sea for a long time, because
tell me,
it's
you
been
guys
a while for
in the
myself
States,
as well.
do you have to pay do you have to get a license to fish
fishing license, yes sir.
Wow.
Not where I am, not on the ocean where I am.
Oh,
there are places
Louisiana,
where it would be required, but most places where there's a public jetty into the salt water, typically you can fish. It's not true everywhere. Like if you want to go into ponds and stuff, you need to have a license to catch bass and stuff. If you want to commercially take anything, you've got to. See, when I was a kid, and I mean young. We used to live down on the beach. We made an A-frame fort and floated it down the beach. We put it on floats, styrofoam floats, and we floated it down the beach and built a stone wall around it and propped it up so the mean high water would go under it. We didn't go home that summer for like maybe a month or a month and a half because we had lobster, we had snails, we had clams, we had fish, and we just fed ourselves. That's how it was when I was young, which is why I'm so keenly aware of the reduction in life down there. So I can't be party to
how much
During
would you
the
say is
summer-
propaganda of those numbers? Everything's running out. We're being overfished. You got to catch and release. You recycle, reuse. The planet's dying. How much would you say?
I think a lot of it is, but you see, in places like where I'm at, I can see the reduction in life. You know, there's gill nets across the front of the river. So yeah, man, people are taking the resources. The thing about life is that it tends to come back pretty quickly. We had the same problem here at the end of the 80s. You couldn't catch a fish. Save the Bay got involved, which is local. It's not like a Greenpeace or anything like that. And they really got involved. And at the end of the 90s, there were fish again. The year that my father died, there was a bluefish run here like I had never seen in my lifetime. And I was even saying to my wife, man, if bluefish were the size of sharks, people would not swim. We'd get up on the bridges and up on the jetties and watch, and they'd come through like packs of wolves, these bluefish. And they got piranha teeth, kind of. But they're big fish. And so that was back in 2005. And then this year in the fall, there was almost no bluefish, all very tiny. So I think it's about local areas where there's a lot of people taking, but there's a whole ocean, in front of us. We're here in these local spillways and rivers and other places. I'm guessing if I went out into the ocean, I wouldn't see that. See, these are hard things to know. It's whenever you see these global numbers where the world population is this, or guess what, there's only this many seals left in the world. You've got to suspect those numbers. And it's a hard thing to do because you don't want animals to go extinct. You don't want things overhunted. You understand that's a possibility, but
well, they're generally coming from organizations like the United Nations, who owns the World Health Organization and
right.
The World Wildlife Fund, and you can trace all that bullshit back to the bloodlines, basically.
Of course, and anything like people would be astonished. Greenpeace, even Planned Parenthood. People hate to hear it, but even Planned Parenthood in the United States can be traced to these same places. They were set up to do a thing. It's like the World Wildlife Fund in Africa. They're always touting, look, we got back these 100,000 acres, so now all these animals can migrate without being interrupted. And everyone gets happy about that. And they should. But what they're not telling you is all the people that got screwed over. All the tribes and everything in the area that got screwed over. It's basically a form of eco-fascism, and it's directly tiable to the royal families, the elite, the Tavistock Institute, and other places who actually gave them the blueprints on how even Greenpeace is part of this. People don't like hearing that, but it's not really arguable. You can show the documentation that proves it.
No,
well, here in the South
is.
Louisiana area, here in the Gulf Coast region, we are pretty much over, or if anybody has any sense, they're over using the ocean here anymore. Once they use the Corexit dispersant to clean up the oil spill from the BP spill. I mean, there's been so many health-related issues down here. They've turned it into this thing called the Gulf Coast Syndrome. People are, kidney damage, liver damage, migraines, chemical issues, memory loss, weight loss. It's pretty insane. So,
damn, dude, is that a bluefish?
Sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Just looking at this picture of this fish, it's honking, man. It's like a 15-pound fish.
I know, it's great.
Like
can we show that? Here, let me see.
Yeah, see if you can share it. But you're absolutely right, Crow. When I was a kid, pre-20, I went off to Africa on a sort of self-promoting high, working for a charity out there that was what we were told was. We were working in Tanzania and for the University of Dar es Salaam, the capital, and what we were told was that the locals would go round these islands and they would be dynamite fishing. So they were chucking in dynamite and just clearing out. They were destroying the coral reef, everything along those lines. And we were out there to valiantly map out all these coral reefs and take fish sizes and everything. I was out there for about 3 months, and then went traveling for about 6. But I later, you know, you catch yourself on later in life, and you just think, did I really do that? Is that accurate? And I went and looked it up, and the major sponsor, or you know, the huge funding for the University of Dar es Salaam came directly from the Rockefellers. And there you go. Yeah, what we were actually doing was mapping these little islands off the coast of Tanzania and declaring them green zones and non-fish zones, and stopping the locals from fishing them. And of course, the locals weren't dynamite fishing at all. I mean, I spent a week with the locals. We were talking about it earlier, shark fishing, but they weren't dynamite fishing at all. It was a ruse to stop people fishing.
It's pretty funny, you know, you've got these people that are so poor, they're subsistence fishing, but they can afford dynamite.
Yeah, and the fact that, you know, the coral reefs have been there for however many thousands of years,
right.
And they don't understand from their fathers, their grandfathers, to the fathers, to the sons, that, you know, if you go blow it up, that you get rid of the reef, you're going to have no reef fish, which is what they eat and live off. So
exactly,
the locals weren't that stupid. They weren't going out dynamite fishing. But I'll tell you what, we had the fastest boat on the coast of Tanzania, gunboat, and they were saying that the local fishermen were bringing their wives and children out with them so that the gunboat wouldn't open fire on them, you know, because they were so cowardly. They were bringing their wives and children with them, and all of it, absolute propaganda horse shit, and I fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
That goes to show you, man, belief is in fact the enemy of knowing. If you can be convinced to believe a thing, it will skew your ability to make decisions and assess things. But more than that, the overarching takeaway that I just heard you speak about is the wholesale convincing of those of us who have been separated from nature that people who still live in nature don't know how to live in nature. And there is the lie. It's like the Mayans, you know. How'd the Mayans go away? Well, they lived in the jungle, but they didn't know enough about the jungle to know if they didn't cut down every tree, they'd be dead. You know, these are nonsensical arguments. Anyone who lives within the scope of nature understands what nature will allow. And so these things that we're told, they're just pipe dreams, man. There's no other way to put it.
It's like the British Empire, you know, turning up in Australia, and these savages are running around the original Australians, and they just slaughter them, and the same in the North America with the North American Indians. And that's what I read today or yesterday, was the actual source of Thanksgiving was an absolute slaughter of the American indigenous population on that day. You know, the only feast was being had by the colonials.
Wouldn't surprise me. And in terms of the Aboriginal population in Australia, I think it can be argued those are one of the longest lived, still kind of in some sort of a semblance, cultures in existence. I think that maybe they would have a claim tracking back through history as far as anyone can. But my point here is they could teach more to any Western culture than nearly anything you can point to. Those Aboriginal peoples, like the folk in Australia, have so much natural knowledge that is beyond value that they could teach. And again, what do we see? We see these kind of Western governments coming in to dismantle that. And the reason, the argument Jason and I have been making for quite a number of weeks now, is that this new elite power is trying to replace the natural system with an artificial system. You know, they want to be truly like the gods of this place, and they're gonna replace it all with artificial systems that they control. And the problem with that is we live in a perfect natural system, whether it's natural in the way we think or not. It appears to be perfect, and what they're going to give us in return is so far from perfect it can never be overstated.
Something artificial, isn't it? Yeah, Crow, I've got hundreds of questions, so I could speak to you for hours, but I'm going to yield the floor because I know we've got at least 5 other people on the panel.
And there we go.
Or maybe not.
Somebody better roll one up or something. There's dead air.
Yeah. Well, definitely the whole idea, we kind of got off the topic a little bit. I want to get back to the whole programming, the magic, the spell crafting, because a lot of people still just don't see that. I mean, whether you believe this is going on, whether you believe that this works, whether you believe it's happening out there in the world or not, they do, and they're in power. They're the ones in control of this mad system. So you kind of touched on it a lot in our pre-show this Wednesday. 9/11, definitely the center point of it all. But I mean, it happens all the time. It's happening in music, movies, TV. This latest show that I love, great, love it, Stranger Things.
It's almost total saturation.
It is just so filled with programming and clues. And have you had a chance to decode any of that, or?
I don't watch a lot of TV. I think I've been hearing about the program you're talking about, but I've never really seen it. I keep I watch TV listings because I know they're going to reflect what's going on in the world, and I record a few things, but mostly for research. And exactly. I often don't watch the whole thing. I just can't anymore. It's like, by the time, like, I'll grab a Big Bang because I'll suspect that the latest, millions of mind programming is coming out. By the time I've heard the laugh track on the third bad joke, I just can't take it, man.
That is my kryptonite, a laugh track. My goodness.
Yeah, it's a bit much, and it's funny. It goes to show how dazed out you are. The average person who watches Big Bang and enjoys it and is entertained, just tell them to simply pay attention to the laugh track and nothing else. And it's a bit jolting for these people because for some reason your mind just kind of zeroes that out when you're in TV zone mode.
Well, the patterns are there. You can see them. They're easy to find. They're easy to look up. We talked about the whole idea of the alpha state, the theta state that actually can be achieved. I mean, that is straight dream time. That is when you're literally in almost a REM state. I had a tape a few years back that I had gotten. I used to do a lot of, are you familiar with the Monroe Institute at all?
I am. We talked a little bit about it in the episode I put out today. I've actually had friends that went there. I was invited to go there. I couldn't make it, but I spent years researching Tibetan meditation and other Indian traditions, which play directly into what Monroe Institute does, although they are bringing technology to bear to try to speed up what might take a lifetime, with audio tapes and other things.
It's powerful. I had a series of tapes from, I guess 2000, 97, 98, something like that I and someone else did a lot of hours into. So for people who don't know, it's basically a technology that uses frequencies, 2 different frequencies in each ear that kind of create a third harmonic, if you will, and can basically, it's called hemisync technology. It makes both sides
level 3, right? Level 3.
Right. Yep. Speak to each other.
4 to 7. I might add too, this is really dangerous because this theta stuff, Walt, the new age movement and all the boomers and stuff, they live it up because they sell this shit as healing. This is the healing range.
That's where I was heading. It's not
4 to 7 hertz, baby. Opposite ears, it gets you real pumped up.
Be very
careful. It is dangerous. It is opening Kundalini shit.
I had an experience where I let someone not quite as deeply in a protective state, I guess, had not had years of practice with these things, listen to some of these tapes just to kind of get some of the early stages of it. And it actually, take it for what you will. They had an abduction experience that night. So connection.
Well,
opening up
the
doorways.
hemisync, it's about, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, the idea of hemisync is to get your left and right hemispheres
Exactly.
more in tuned. You'll find that a lot of people with Rh negative factor or O negative also report having abduction experience. I don't accept the idea of aliens in the way they've been explained. I think I can demonstrate that was social engineering. But my point is, for someone who has no teacher, for someone who hasn't taken years to get to that level and has used technology to begin to get to a level that would take a meditator quite some time, it doesn't surprise me that in the dream state they may think these things are happening. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, certainly I can speak from years of experience. There are things out there amongst us, without a doubt. That's part of what led me down the path I've been on, is a lifetime of dealing with this with family members long before technology was involved or tapes or anything else. And definitely with a life of trying to find protection, trying to find a way to work through some of that. Yeah, trying to fast forward it with a little trick that can definitely lead you down a path that can get you in some serious issues. Energy.
Can I just ask whether this is whether since flat Earth realization, bear with me on this, Crrow, I know you don't regard yourself as a flat earther or whatever, but whether the opinion on space aliens and coming from outer space has changed. That's probably a question to you, Walt. I mean, the space alien thing has probably gone out the window, but
oh yeah, big time.
But people who are not from terra firma, extraterrestrial,
it simply could be a
still
vibration.
Very much on the table. Yeah.
Oh yeah, a vibrational change, and you're right there in the room with something that you're not aware of. I mean, that's all it takes, is just a little frequency shift. I think that we're surrounded by these. I've experienced them. There's no doubt about that for me. And that's lifetime of experiencing and dealing with and learning to do battle with, if you will. Yeah. And I didn't know we were going to get off into this topic at all, but definitely, as you guys know, we've talked about this many times. I've done a lot of research. I've met a lot of people. I mean, I held and examined the Star Child skull at length. It is not human, and the vibrational frequency it creates is not. It is evil, period. It is evil. And the bloodlines, the genetics, there's a bigger picture here.
Can you describe the feeling again, Walt? Holding it?
I'm sorry, what? I missed both of y'all. I didn't hear either question. I apologize.
Sorry.
Who first?
Maybe the question I got. I
go ahead, John.
It was to Crrow to say, what do you make of the space aliens now?
Well, I can demonstrate to my satisfaction that the modern kind of ufology is a construction of Tavistock. Most of it springs out of Roswell, which happened on the 33rd parallel, but there's documentation basically where people in Tavistock are being shown or claiming responsibility for the Aquarian age that happened to the generation of the 60s and the idea of aliens and the way we think about them, like Greys and reptilians. But we also went back to demonstrate that one of the first modern uses of the Grey, maybe the first, is from H.G. Wells. And of course, H.G. Wells is from around the Ring of Elites, and that the reptilian idea, which was so popular on YouTube, was actually brought to bear in the modern times by a college professor who lifted it from the Conan the Barbarian comics. So while I can't tell you what is in a universe, what living things may or may not be here, what I can demonstrate is that most people's idea of aliens, Greys, this is all a construct of social engineering. I think what is likely or true is that in the same way, I have known people in meditation, and as a matter of fact, to get back to the Monroe Institute, there's documentation, even in CIA documents, like if a person just happened to be sitting in a room with an air conditioner that constantly vibrated at 7 hertz, it's shown that they will be more intuitive, be able to do all these things that other people couldn't do unless they had many years of meditation behind them. since I understand what's behind meditation and studied Tibetan meditation and its roots into Indian Eastern traditions, I understand that there is higher states a human being can be. And so most of us, when we hear a thing like, well, you got to be to a higher vibrational level, we think we're listening to hippie generation hokum, but it's really kind of not when you break it down to what's actually going on. And this is why the tapes actually work. It's demonstrating that a vibrational frequency has a bearing and that you can sync both hemispheres of your brain. You can take vibrations from your heart and circulatory system and have it resonate in the membrane around your brain. These are things that would take a meditator years and years with a good teacher to take them along the path and to teach them not to be fooled, even like in levels of meditation where someone thinks they've reached enlightenment, but they haven't, but they've reached such a state of ecstasy, they think I've finally done it. And without a teacher to tell you, don't get bogged down here. Don't take another hit off that joint. You've got to experience this and move on. You're not there yet. These kinds of ideas from having a teacher, what we find is, it would not surprise me at all to find out that there are life forms that are at a frequency we don't see or something like that. Or maybe it's even us. Maybe it's just other people who are a bit higher than we're. Who knows? I don't know about these things. I don't have any basis to address them. But I can tell you flat out, gray aliens is Tavistock nonsense, and so are reptilians.
Absolutely. The whole culture that's been built up around it is designed, as you say, with the media, the movies, Spielberg. I mean, one of my favorite authors, Jacques Vallée, and his whole take on these creatures is that they have been here forever. They've been amongst us forever. They just put on whatever convenient costume for the era, and ours turned into space age. So that's the dressing they chose, is to take it to the space age area. But they've been here. They were the little people. They were think of the changelings. That's basically the same idea as the abduction scenario with the baby being taken. Yeah, they've always been here. We've never been alone in this plane.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I talk about things I have direct experience. I understand the idea. You know, even in the higher meditation, there were regularly, and this goes from region to region in the world, that seemingly should have had no contact with each other, even across things like Zen Buddhism to Mahayana to other forms of Eastern religions that meditated, where they would run into these things they called dakinis, in higher states of meditation, that could either teach you something or treat you badly if you were not worthy of being taught a thing. And that's just one example out of many. And to me, these are not arguable things. These people had no reason to lie. They came from a culture where the entire culture was based on the idea that a human could be enlightened, and they meditated their whole lives. Not only did they meditate their whole lives, they worked on the idea that if you harm another living being, and I'm talking about the worm outside your door, there's a price to be paid. So to me, you may not understand exactly what's being communicated because maybe there's a cultural gap, but there's something there to be learned, certainly.
That's really interesting you should say that, because about 5 years ago I decided to completely change my outlook. I used to look at people, you know, and with disdain and hate and say things in my mind that I shouldn't have said, and maybe out loud that I shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
And at some point I said, it came upon me, the notion of stop killing things, you know, flies in the kitchen, things like this, where I was getting bigger and better fly swats and things like this. And it was just like, no, now, ever since then, 5 years ago, I've stopped killing anything. As far as I know, I haven't killed anything other than the microbiology that's under my shoe. And things go a lot more smoother. There's just no better way to say it. I don't understand it, but it has turned into a sort of unprovable superstition.
But it is provable, though. Wait a minute. Let's take that for a second. You just said that things have gotten better. You see, this is a higher mindedness. This is the equivalent of taking on that idea of a higher vibration, but more so. There's no coincidence in this world. Everything is cause and effect. There is no thing that happens without some cause that caused it. And so if we take this to its logical conclusion, and we can test it, we can throw the rock into the pond, watch the ripples go away, there's your cause, there's your effect. Everything in this existence, like if nobody made a cause, there would be no effect. Yep. So everything that occurs, we can logically work out. And what that means is what you started to talk about was how you think about people. That is so freaking key. I can never stress in my life how much key that is. If you wouldn't say a thing and you moderate your speech, but you're still thinking, oh, that person sucks, or I'd like to kick that guy in the nuts. It doesn't matter. You're doing the same amount of damage. When you get to the point where you look at the person across from you and understand they're the victim you are, man. It's like I had a recent episode where the crow was thinking the same black line that was drawn on you was drawn on me. You see, that's the idea here, is that we're all subject to this place and we're all suffering it because of it at some level. When you get to a point, let me tell you something. Everyone, like even my wife, has always asked me, why are you so lucky? How come bad things don't happen to you? And I tried to tell her I'm not lucky. It's that ever since I was a kid, I didn't want to harm things. I don't know why I'm this way, but I understood that when I did harm things, like when I was a kid, we would go out and hunt rattlesnakes and kill them and skin them. I worked on a commercial fishing boat when I was young. I fished a lot. And I know verbatim that when I quit taking life and quit thinking badly about other living beings and people, that's why people think I'm lucky. But it's nothing to do with luck. It's just, it's respecting this place and understanding that every person in this place, they're suffering just like you are, man. And you could look at them and hate them for something, but the truth is they're as victimized as you are. They're stuck in the same freaking mud hole you are. When you recognize that, the only thing you can recognize beyond that is that we're all going to die. And when you come to truly understand that you're going to die, then when you look at that other person, that other dog, that other cat, you understand that you share that. They're going to die too. And that makes the difference of everything. Now you can go into life and have a better path. And people look and say, well, why are you lucky? And you think to yourself, it's not lucky. It's just that I'm not causing trouble for myself.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And you hit the nail on the head when you said that it's not, it has nothing to do with, your outward appearance. It's to do with what you're thinking as well. So if you're looking at someone and smiling at them, but inside you're thinking, damn, I'd love to kick you in the nuts, you're an idiot. That's right. Then that's the thing that matters. It's the actual, when you look out the window and you see someone and you think, you are, I went from openly saying, you fat bag of shit or whatever, to thinking, smiling outside and thinking you fat bag of shit, and finally going to, oh my God, you're a victim. You're exactly the same as me. You have no idea what's even been done to you, and it turns into a pity and then a love, and things just happen. I don't understand it, but things just change.
But I tell you, anybody who looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her.
You're pointing out what I was about to point out. You see, these are universal ideas. Even in Western religion, he just quoted the biblical idea. If you've already thought the sin, then you may as well have committed it. Pluck your eye out before it allows you, or cut your hand off before it allows you to sin. This is the exact same idea, which is why it's kind of infuriating for me, because a lot of what I see in the conspiracy community is a lot of people who are very religious and a lot of people who are very not religious. And they constantly go at each other. And you see, this is the same idea. How in the hell does a person who doesn't accept Christianity think they understand everything that could be known about someone believing in Christianity? I would estimate that of any book in this world that I have studied the most, it would have to probably be one or another versions of the Bible. I've gone at it over and over and over to the point where I understand that probably a surface reading is not helpful. It's like a test. It's like alchemy. The idea that that if you get lead, you can turn it into gold. Well, you see, that's the fool's path. The truth of alchemy is the gold is a higher human being, and the lead was the lower human being that they currently are. See, in the Bible, all these other things are encoded for the person who may be able to get to the deeper levels, or have a teacher maybe that can show them what the pastor in the front of the church cannot. And it drives me berserk all the time to see the Christian person down the Islamic person, the non-religious person to down the Christian person, because you see, the universal ideas are encoded in all of it. It's just not that obvious to the average person.
Totally agree.
I will beg to differ, but that's why we are all different personalities, and that's why I love Iron Realm Media, because we have all different types here. By the way, you have been listening to Iron Realm Media, Flat Friday, and yeah.
And you've also been listening to Crrow777. And if you want to get in touch with him, it's www.Crrow777radio.com.
And as always, you can call us here on the flat line at 304-503-FLAT. That's 3528.
And the reason you're here, Crow, primarily is that a couple of days ago you were murdered, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, start that meme. Maybe I can get back on the internet.
Crow, right.
That's not a bad idea. Well, my
That
YouTube
is
channel
not a
was
bad
murdered.
idea, actually.
But you've given me a good idea. We can start one of those Charlie Sheen died today memes.
Yeah.
That would be hysterical. Would
Crow
it not?
murdered.
Yeah, if it wasn't so dishonest, I'd do it.
Shot with a blank, that was real.
There you go.
Yeah.
But no, on a serious note, I mean, you've had hundreds and hundreds of hours of top quality, technologically advanced astronomical observations that has literally just been wiped clean because they don't like the fact that you're saying something. I don't understand. What's been going on, man?
Well, this is a funny thing. Are you guys aware of who the Jungle Surfer is?
Absolutely.
So check it out. It was about, I don't know how long ago it was that we did the last episode. He was under total censorship, 2 strikes, getting ready to lose channels. He contacted me. I said, yeah, we'll come on the show. So I cleared my slate and got him on a show. And he said this to Jason, and Jason echoed it out the other day. But what stunned me is I had never realized it, and it's true. He said, Crow, the Flat Earth movement started about a month after you first started publishing your lunar work, and Dave J began claiming that the moon was just a light in the sky. And I was listening to him, and I said, well, is that really true? I said, I know they happened around the same time. And so we paused, and I went back and I looked. It's absolutely true. So that could be part of it, because I think what happened, if in fact everything that I have just said is accurate, and I have every reason to believe it is, Jungle Surfer is the one who got me to look to try to confirm what he was saying is true, is that people started challenging, looking up at the moon. What is that, man? I've looked at it my whole life. I've never thought about it. And that led them to look at the environment. And so maybe there's some of that at play in what's going on. Who knows? Maybe the lunar wave is more important than we ever knew. I don't know, because I don't know for sure what lunar waves are, but there's certainly that possibility.
Well, I reckon, right, and here's something I've been absolutely salivating to ask you. I put out a blog post called The Impossible Moon Phases, and I think it's just the fact that you are concentrating people's attention on the moon, on what's going on with the moon, and getting more and more people looking at it and observing it. And I'd love to. I'm going to send you this blog post, and I'd love to know what your reaction is to it, because it entirely, just the moon phases alone entirely throw out anything that the heliocentric model can put forward. The crescent moon and the gibbous moon, they have to fall into rules. So you can only have a crescent moon in the daytime. You can only have a gibbous moon in the nighttime. But of course, we all see both, and this is something I've gone on Iron Realm Media on about for absolute donkeys. But I'll send it to you, and I'd love your opinion on that. Sorry,
I'd love to see it. I'd like to see it, but I think your opening statement there was a key point. When a lot of people start to scrutinize the same thing, guess what, man? The reality that we've accepted for so long comes under, it gets challenged. It's exactly what you're explaining here. Wait a minute, we've thought this all this time, but look, it can't be correct. I think there's a lot to that, and I would add, when I was back in San Diego filming the very last solar eclipse that I filmed there, I was on the verge of saying the moon played no role in solar eclipses. It wasn't until this 2017 solar eclipse that we just had went by that I actually made the announcement, which is better, actually, because the whole idea of infinite light sources, or what a spotlight would do, came to play into it, where I could comfortably state, without any reservation, that the moon plays absolutely zero role in a solar eclipse, which led me to the language. Why do we call it a new moon? Isn't it the same old moon? Why do we call it a young moon? All these ideas, but to top it off, understanding from my back when I was a roadie days and realizing that everything I'd learned about lights had a bearing on what I was doing, that just came to light. And I was able to also make the statement that whatever covered the sun, or whatever was involved in the eclipsing of that light, is roughly 72 miles wide, because the sun is an infinite light source and it will only cast a shadow the size of the object regardless of the position of the light source. And that's the physics. Yeah, that's the physics of our of infinite light, which you can do the exact opposite of that with a point source or a spotlight, where if you move it closer to the object, the shadow it casts gets bigger. This is not the case with infinite light, and this is recognized by science, physics, myself, having proved it being around stage lighting. These are key points, and it goes to, it's like when you go back and you reread the protocols of Zion. So many people fight about it. Is this real? Is this a hoax? It doesn't matter. Some of the things being said there, they're true. Like, let the Goyim have their science. We've had agents carefully plant these ideas, and the one thing about the Goyim is they'll never investigate all these things they believe in to see if there's any value. Well, what could be a truer representation of this idea than taking apart a solar eclipse over the number of years I did and finally understanding the things that I've just explained, in the same way that getting all those people to look at the moon apparently may have played a role in what we now call the flat earth movement. It was people who had taken for granted their whole life that their 5th grade teacher told them the truth, their 12th grade teacher, their bachelor degree professor, but one day they woke up and went out and looked for themselves, and all of a sudden they realized, holy crap, I've been swallowing nonsense.
Absolutely, I can say without a doubt, your video did lead me to flat Earth research, sir. So thank you. Is that true? Without a doubt, it is 100% true. I was seeing things. I've been looking at the moon my whole life. I've been an amateur astronomer, and I had seen things, that I was questioning. Just obvious interaction with the moon and clouds. I could see cloud rings being created, clouds being blown apart by the moon and put into a circle, not an optical illusion with ice rings and all this stuff. I'm watching this happen. As I'm watching the same afternoon before that, clouds be attracted to the sun, positive, negative, and that's what I'm seeing and trying to figure out. So I'm looking at videos on YouTube trying to see what is going on with these cloud rings, and I see your lunar wave videos, and I'm like, lunar wave, what's this? And I start watching, and within the next few days, here's 1,000 videos of flat Earth, and I'm like, what's this? It's 2014, flat Earth, really? Nah, I can debunk this easily. And here I am 2 years, 3 years later. So, yeah, thank you, sir.
Well, you were relatively early if that was 2014. I think I
The
posted
end of 14, beginning of 15, something like that, right?
Right. So I filmed the best example of the lunar wave on September 26, which was Yom Kippur. Of course, I would be willing to bet it was actually I would actually be willing to bet it was the true equinox. I've already demonstrated how they lie about equinox days. It's not possible to pick a day for the equinox. It depends where you are in the world when you get the equal day and night. But anyhow, I filmed it on the 26th of September in 2012. I didn't post it until, I don't know, I'm guessing October of 2013. So you're already onto the flat earth by 2014. So there's only 3-4 months left in the year there. So you were pretty early into the flat earth movement.
It was probably more the beginning of 15, actually looking back and thinking through it. So yeah, it would begin beginning of 2015
It allowed me to start.
Sorry, so I was just going to say this is sounding a little bit like you after that Father of Flat Earth title there, Crow. I think you might be getting it, mate.
Oh no!
We'll nominate you for the irony awards.
I didn't set out to do any of that. I didn't make any statements. No, that's not fair.
I think
to do that.
We're being facetious, man.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff you do talk about though is very Flat Earth relevant, even if you're not specific on it or deal with it massively. I think, as we're seeing with Flat Earth, the sphere of discussion is expanding. I think massively now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Whatever people think about the core and so on and all the groups that are forming, but the topic range that it's leading to, as it does break people's paradigm of what we're told is the truth, is no longer the truth. I think it's opened up a lot of avenues in every field and validating of the field as well.
As well as experimentation with the moon. I mean, have you guys heard of our very own Adam Meakin's outstanding moon experiment?
Absolutely.
Which was what?
So I, as a challenge from John, we asked to do the Moonlight Caller experiment. So we just took it a little bit further with trying to gather multiple data points and trying to analyze calling rates and significant differences and seeing if shielding affected it and a number of different things. But I think we did come to a fairly conclusive conclusion. There was something occurring, some measurable difference was occurring. We tried to minimize all the parameters of variability as much as we could, so it was literally only the moonlight really causing it, and we did get some pretty accurate calibrated thermometers to do so. And like I said, it wasn't just a laser shot, they were probe thermometers, so they were there to measure how the temperature of that probe fared over a 2 or 3 hour period in sometimes, and we got consistent, repeatable results. I think there's a lot more work to be done, but it certainly showed there's something worth investigating further, and that was a distinct cooling effect that we did know.
Right. I think the first time that I mentioned that must have been 2014. I'm just guessing because I don't have a YouTube channel to look at anymore. But the idea of that came from old accounts where, well, part of it was wrapped up in the Hattie Bob stuff when I was still looking at that before I realized that you couldn't really prove he existed or not. But there was these old accounts where you never tried to dry meat in the moonlight or it would go bad. And as fate would have it, I was messing around with spagyrics, kind of a lower level alchemy where you use herbs to make tinctures and things like that. Well, it wasn't too much earlier than that I realized that it is in fact true that if you harvest certain herbs at the full moon, they're more potent. And that's what got me really going. And then, of course, the spagyrics put me over the top, because the first thing you do is burn the herbs down to ash. In a Western tradition, you've just destroyed that. Science would say, oh, you turned it into carbon. That's that. But that's not true. Then you recombine it all, and when you get all the way through the kind of low-level alchemical process, you have a tincture that is actually more potent than the herb you harvested it from in some cases.
That's amazing. I've never heard of this.
Yeah, that's what got, that's called spagyrics. Anyone can do it who likes to grow like herbs. Anyone who grows herbs should know about it because it's a cool thing to do. Because it teaches you, if you take the spiritual side of it and you harvest the herb according to time of year, keeping full moons and all, following all this kind of natural environment ideas behind the alchemical procedures of that type of science, it teaches you about yourself. What you're doing to the herbs is what can be done to a human being, is the idea. Like the herb is a base thing, like me and you talking right now, drinking alcohol and smoking and doing all the base things humans do. But that herb, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to destroy it to ash. And then I'm going to begin to build it back, kind of like going to boot camp where they rip you down to nothing, where you're not even a human being. And then they build you back into this big, tough Marine kind of idea. It's like that. But the thing that got me was I burned these things down to ash. And I thought, well, everything I know about Western science tells me I just turn this into carbon. That's that. But it's not. It's not that at all. And it proved to me the idea of the importance of the sun and moon. And I was already going on the zodiac at that time, trying to show people why the equinoxes and solstices were important, and trying to show them why the zodiac is important, because that's the only way to place the sun accurately. So there's all that.
That's really interesting.
I'm going to look into
stuff.
that now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Hopefully you can send some
that
links our
sort of
way, or some books or something, PDF or something to look into. That's amazing.
Oh, we'll look into
It's almost like homeopathy, but just totally different, obviously. That's amazing.
I think that's actually, you know what? I'll look that up real quick. I just sent you a thing, but I'll look it up real quick. Oh, wait a minute. I can't lose
on that subject. I look back over the higher side chats, which is when I was looking at your stuff back through to the Lunar Wave. Well, the Lunar Wave was about 2011, wasn't it?
I filmed it. The first one was filmed in the fall of 2012, but not posted until the fall of 2013.
Right, got you. And then Greg had you on the show a number of times.
Right.
And then you were a regular or a sort of exclusive blogger for higher side chats. But I noticed that you were on the 21st of March 2015, and you were immediately followed by Eric DeBay, which I have to admit that was the show that I only needed to listen to about 20 minutes of that show before it just smacked me in the face like a kipper, like a smoked cod or whatever you were talking about earlier. I'm just asking, have you ever listened to that full show of Eric DeBay on higher side chats?
No. You know what? We're recording here, so I'm just going to hold my tongue.
Okay.
I will point out.
I'm not talking personalities. I'm talking the information.
No, I will point out that for some reason, having never spoken with the man, he put me on a top 10 show list. When Mark Sargent first burst onto the scene, and within 3 months had been on every radio show all the way up to Coast, and then had his own radio show, on every interview he went on, he dropped my name and he dropped the Lunar Wave.
That's right.
I guess people may be familiar with the relationship those two supposedly had that fell out. But he listed me on a top 10 show list. But I have since found other things out about the gentleman, and I just, I don't beef with people, so we're recording and it's not my place. So
you got to tell us now, John. What was it on that show specifically that was interesting?
Well, I mean, hopefully we can put. I've just dropped the link to the show in chat, so hopefully we can put that in the description and let people judge for themselves. I would say it was. I would say that in an ironic way, Crow, it was you that brought me to that show, because I was listening to you on the higher side chat, and the next one that came up, and I don't know if you're familiar with the sort of naming convention of the higher side chats, is that you get the name first, and
Right.
then it sort of, and then it leads into the title. So I had no idea that it was Flat Earth. I had no idea of anything. It just came up Eric Bay afterwards, and it was like, okay, you know, just like Joseph or any other character. And it was press play, and I was just walking through the fields, and it slapped me like a kipper in the face. I was just like, yeah.
What was the date?
It was March. I don't know. I've got it here.
You're going to say 21, aren't you?
March 29.
Okay,
Close.
so right after the spring equinox started because of Carl Wood interviewing me.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? And it started. The flat Earth thing started because I was listening to you on Carlwood.
Right.
I
just think that everything that was going on and people, you know, looking at the moon and the environment and all these things differently, and you know, there's no getting away. DeBay has said quite a few things. I just never really followed them. I'm not big on people who put you on a show list never having spoken with you, but I think maybe part of that happened because Sargent and him were at odds, and Sargent was going everywhere. Every interview he did popped up one day. 3 months later, he'd been on every radio show, coast to coast even.
Dropping your name.
Yeah, dropping my name. So I finally did an interview with him to get it on the record that, hey, man, I'm freaking my own dude here. I'm not part of what you're doing. I mean, you could reference my material without making it look like we're butt buddies or something, because that's kind of what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Who knows what shows and plays and things are going on in the background, but I like to credit people with being able to discern when they're listening to bullshit and when they're not. Just like you say, you know, it's an internal thing that just clicks on, and you're just like, no, this is bullshit. This isn't bullshit.
That's right.
And
It's
I can
deeper
listen
than
to
the
anything.
gut, even. I think it's the soul knows truth. The soul
Absolutely.
knows truth.
And you
Well,
can
you
listen
know,
to anything.
I would add another thing. Like if you were a natural person who was going to go out to look for some food thing you needed, living in nature, and you'd be looking around and you'd see this plant and recognize, hey man, when I see that plant, I'm getting close to where I need to be. And you know, you see all these indicators in nature that let you know you're getting close to the food you're looking for. It's like that, but with language and mannerism and presentation and source. It's all these things come at you at once. It takes about 2 seconds to evaluate it. And it's like you say, you understand very quickly the ring of truth is not in it, but it's a complex thing that happens. Yeah.
It's instinct or something. It's just something that's bang, you know, you're in danger. You know, you're in trouble. You know, you need to run, or you know, you're loved, you know, you're cozy and happy and all these sort of things. It's just, you know, it's not something that you have to nudge your mind to tell you that
On that
these are what
subject,
you're
John,
feeling.
I'm going to go and get cozy, and I've got to run as well, mate. So, Crow,
I'll let you say goodbye then.
yeah, Crow,
Okay.
it's been a real pleasure. Everyone, good night. I'm sorry, a lack of energy tonight.
I'm sorry you're under the weather,
the
brother,
hottest,
man.
but,
Go get you some turmeric and get some golden milk going. I promise that's some great stuff. It always helps me when I feel that bad.
Good shout. God bless, guys. Good night.
Love
Yeah.
you, brother.
Feel better,
Have a
Adam.
good night.
Well, we've been going for what is it, Josh?
Oh,
2.5 hours now.
yep, right at 2.5 hours.
Anyone need a potty break or?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm gonna actually need to take a pot. How late are we going? Are we going till midnight here, guys?
It's really
Or what are
on
we
you,
doing?
brother.
You know what?
It's really on you.
Give me an
How
inch and
about
I
if
will
I-
take a mile.
Well, how about if I take a potty break and we'll do another 15 minutes or something?
Perfect.
Sounds like a plan,
Sounds
my
great.
friend.
All right, I'll be back.
Sounds
Excellent.
I will as well.
Sweet. Well, then I guess I'll just sit here and twiddle my thumbs.
I'll talk to you, mate.
Hold on,
What's been going on with you?
I have a commercial
sorry.
I can play.
Sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, that's right. Let's play this first. That way we can get this out of the way. We'll call this paying the bills.
Fears the mind killer. Fears the little death. This is Uncle Walt from the Ironworks. Josh, Corey, and I have chosen to look at life with no fear. No fear of the unknown. No fear of questions about the supposedly well-known. No fear of ridicule for thinking outside the familiar fool's lines. No fear of the boot on the neck of those refusing the party line. No fear of taking on those so convinced of their beliefs they would sooner drink the Kool-Aid than believe they've been fools made. In this world filled with me too, cattle think, can truth's protective layers be peeled back to show the tender, juicy pink? Are we all just grist for the mill? Souls sold against our will, or is that just how it feels? When you're filled to the rim with trivialities so fear-filled and grim, break clear of the fear. Right here, Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 a.m. on TFR. Josh and I and you will hammer out the impurities of technology-driven groupthink, fold in a dash of logic, and quench it all with a bit of absurdity. The Ironworks. Break clear of the fear.
So, yeah, then just another quick shout out to everybody there on TFR. I mean, they got a lot of really good hosts there. Billy Ray Valentine and the Infinite Fringe. If you're a fan of Crrow and follow what Crrow does, you've probably heard him over there. He was on there just last week before, something like that. Shoot, I was there, I should remember, but I'll be damned if I do. But yeah, he's over there on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific. So check out Billy Ray Valentine and the Infinite Fringe. You might find me over there. You might find a co-host, Ben Hameen. He co-hosts a show of his own as well called The Conspiracy You can find that show over at hackerhameen.podbean.com. Another show I like to check out is on Friday and Saturday nights, right at midnight Pacific. So it's kind of early for me, way in the morning. But luckily I can check it on the replay. There's a show called Into the Microcosm with Jimmy Jean. Man, he puts together some really awesome music sound bites and mashes them all together. It's really great stuff. P900 Cool Picks in chat says Kev Baker show too. Yeah, you know, Kev Baker is one of those guys you could just kind of sit back in the dark and listen to, and it doesn't really matter what he says. You can just enjoy listening to it. Maybe it's that Scottish brogue, but I really dig it. I really dig a lot of the hosts on there. But Jimmy Jean is Friday and Saturday nights at midnight, and then he gets his replay on Mondays at noon. So if you miss him live, that's when they do replay it for you. So that's always a great thing. So yeah, that's kind of all the housekeeping I have. Just keep an ear open over there at tfrlive.com. Also, when you need a Crrow fix, you can head on over to Crrow's website, because that's where Crrow's putting all his stuff since YouTube wants to just yank his channel down. # modern day book burning. You can check him out over at CRROW777 radio.com. That's Crrow777radio.com. And he does do sort of a truncated version for free on some of his stuff, but I highly recommend go ahead and pay in the measly penance for a few extra dollars a month so you can get the full version. It's definitely worth it. The stuff that he and Jason do is really, really next level.
Did you say W?
I did. Isn't that the last letter?
It is a double U.
How would you spell Crrow without a W?
CRROW.
Yes, W.
Oh, sorry, W. Okay.
Yeah, so it is a W.
Right, got you. I'll shut up.
Oh, that's everything I had.
See, aren't you glad us Americans fixed this English thing for you guys?
America. Don't you understand the language?
That means you. Right.
That's
For
it's
the
a
you people out there. We are tuning into www.crrow777radio.com.
You're listening to London Radio 1
Don't need to sign in.
My question: when is he
First
back?
hour
Bro,
is
let me know when he's
free.
back.
I'm back.
Okay,
No,
here's
I
a question
have
I've
not
had
been paid.
since the first time I saw your name written with 2 R's in it.
Ooh, good
Are
question.
you a Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan?
No, they started. There's a character called Crow. Why does that guy spell his name with 2 R's?
When they stretch it out like that on the screen, they spell it with quite a few R's. I just thought maybe you were giving it a little quick.
They started that after as far as I know, and I could be wrong here because I've never really paid attention, but I think I remember when they introduced the new puppets in that, and I remember looking at my wife saying, "Look, they got a crow." The crow in my name is based on my birth name. You know, it's a play. It's a poke in the eye to my corporate name.
Yes.
You know, people used to write Crow to send me an email in the early days of the internet to get my birth name to send me an email. That's how that started, and they all resolved to 7. But if I'm not mistaken, someone's probably going to look it up and tell me I'm wrong. But I was under the impression that was the new Science Theater 3000, and it came to be after Crrow777 on YouTube did.
I don't know. They've been at it quite a while.
Yeah.
How long is the
I think
Crow
they
character
started,
in there?
I've got a burning question again.
88?
Yeah.
89,
Oh, really? I guess-
something like
so
that.
there
man.
is-
Yeah,
geez,
they've been
I'll
around
look
a
it up and
while.
I'll go
On
on.
like local television. I'll find out. I will.
I didn't know. I thought that was, see, the first time I saw it was just like a year or two ago, and they were introducing them on the channel where I was, and I said, "Hey, man, look, they got a new puppet named Crow." But anyhow, I guess I'm wrong. But what's your burning question?
That was it.
Thanks.
That was it. If you were a fan of MST3K, Mystery Science Theater.
I heard someone else say they had a burning question, man. I can
John
smell
had a
Chance
burning itch.
Yeah,
All right,
and,
yeah.
and
I got a burning question. I got an itch I need to scratch. Crow, I want to know what your position is on being as anonymous as you can online. I don't know if your face is online, and if it is, then how do you feel about that? If it isn't, then
It is. I've put it online. I've had whole interviews early on where my face is online. Look, this is what happened. When I first filmed the lunar wave, I held on to it for about a year. And, you know, when we came to understand it was probably important, it was a year later, a little longer than a year. In October the following year, I posted it. And like all hell broke loose, man. And within a few months, people were like trying to contact me, saying they were going to Google map me and find me because they knew I was in San Diego. And it became very clear that I didn't want my life infringed on. The things that we were showing were the focus in my view. Like, look, man, you should be looking at the moon. But it started to be like, we're going to make you famous or a villain for this. That's how that all started. Everything, the kind of pushing of the cartoon Crow as a representation, which was all based on my corporate birth name, of course. But the point is, I didn't want the attention, and I didn't. If someone's going to be famous, they need to do something great. I pointed a telescope at the moon and by accident caught the lunar wave. Those are not the grounds to be special in any way. So to me, it's always been about the topic, not me.
yeah, well, it's more than Newton did. But
Well, they named the
if
cookie
you
out.
had
of
the
it, didn't they?
do you get recognized on the street now? I mean, do people come up to you and go, "Oh, you're Crow," or whatever?
got a
I mean, if
story.
you had the choice, go.
I got a story about that. So way back in the early days of my thing, people wanted t-shirts. So I made these t-shirts with Crow stuff on them and put them on Cafe Press. The problem being is that, you know, most of the people who followed me didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't mark them up. I was never making money on it. They just wanted the shirts. So then the thing became, take a picture of yourself with a shirt on, I'll put it in my video. That went on for a little while. But anyhow, I get ready to do this big, long 8,000-mile drive around the country. And I say to my wife, you know, all these people are trying to say I'm so well known. I'm going to put on my Crow shirt. Do you think anyone will recognize me? My wife says, I know someone will recognize you. Dude, I wore that shirt way more than I should have. And no one recognized me or commented on the shirt all the way from the north part of the country to the East Coast, all the way through the south part of the country back to San Diego. Not one person even commented on my shirt. So there it is.
But you have 80,000, or you had 80,000 followers on YouTube. Just flushed down the toilet.
Well, according to YouTube, they'd already flushed 30,000 down the toilet before they did that to me. They claim, in my stats on that channel before they killed it, they claimed I had lost 30,000 subscribers over the life of my channel.
Mm.
Not even kidding.
And the fact that I mean the hit count on your Crrow777radio.com is not going up. It's like what the hell are these people doing now? I mean,
well, you see, look, man. Right now, it's been going on and off for a couple months, but since the channel got smoked the other day, a lot of people, if they use a Google tool to try to go to my website, they get a warning that it contains malware or phishing with this little link that says go to the site, or this big blue button that says go back to safety. But that's not the half of it. There are people today posting on Twitter showing a screen capture of their browser window saying that Crrow777's DNS cannot be resolved. So apparently Google products are doing everything they can to steer traffic away from Crrow777radio.com.
Well, I would say to anyone listening, then that is it's
nonsense.
Unbelievable proof that we need to get away from Google. We need to get away from YouTube. We need to get away from these monopolistic bullshit.
Well, here's the
overarching things.
Here's the thing too I wanted to mention. So I had posted on my Twitter today that they burned the history of my name because for a couple days I'd been searching and there was like 1 or 1.5 pages of stuff about Crrow on my search engines, and I had a couple other people check. They're all, yeah, man, it's like all gone. Well, while we were on that last break, I went and looked on my Twitter. Someone posted, I'll look at it right now. I'll tell you how many things he said there are. He did a screen capture of his search of my name, and he says, let me get over there. Here we are. And he said there were 217,000 search returns. So I posted to him, holy crap, man, that's not what I'm seeing. What part of the country are you in? So then I thought, well, wait a minute. So I opened up a Google browser and did a search. I got 61,000 returns, which is not what I was seeing. That's only 18 pages. I went to the end real quick before we came back on. So that supposed 61,000, how can it be 61,000 search returns and only be 18 pages? But anyhow, 2 weeks ago, when I did a search for Crrow777 radio, I couldn't even get to the end of the list. You know, I'd gotten up to 30, 40 pages before scanning through, looking, but there was more and more and more. So something even there is dynamically changing, because unless he's in a different country and they're seeing something different, I don't know how to explain it.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's AI. These AI are rewriting logarithms. They're taking out speech patterns. They're picking up, 30 seconds of music on a video. I mean, we're literally now at the behest of AI.
Yeah, and I think there might be something to that, because I was posting that not only did they burn 4 years of telescopic observation, now they're burning the history of Crrow online that goes back to 2013. So it could be that we are looking, I mean, something dynamic has changed. There's no arguing it. Yesterday I was getting 1.5 pages. If I did a search for today or the last 24 hours, I got like 5 returns. I don't think in the history. Yeah.
Would you recommend that anyone that downloaded your stuff in the past uploads it?
Do whatever the hell you want with it, man. I'm done. I'm freaking done. I used to try to protect it because so many people would steal it and then lie about it. Like they would take the weird objects I've shot and said, this is little green men from Venus. We know it is, and this is how we know. And then they'd say things about the lunar wave like, well, clearly Crrow made it in a software program, and we're going to show you how to do that now. In some cases, they actually took my clip, put it in software, and then claimed they replicated it in software when they hadn't done anything. It was the same clip. So for a while, for a long while, I said, I'm not going to stand for that. I took like 4 years solid of my life to do it. But you want to know something? If you can get a hold of some of my footage, there's no record of it now for people to look at. Do what you will. just don't lie about it. Just don't be cool and don't say things that aren't true. That would be helpful. And of course, it'd be really helpful if you attributed it to me. And the only place I can be found is on Crrow777radio.com. So, if you want to use my footage, have a care.
How do people get in touch with you? Because Crrow777radio.com now is pretty much the only platform you've got other than radio shows like ours.
Right. I'm sorry. Hold on. This thing's breaking up.
So, guys, I wanted to touch.
Me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, so far so good. I didn't want to keep you too long. I know you needed to get out of here soon. We've kept you damn near 3 hours, and boy, do I appreciate it. Apparently, there was supposed to be some sort of rocket launch with some steam-powered rocket. It's supposed to go up like a quarter mile into the air. I just got a message on the flat line. Someone who's French and is quite having a hard time understanding the whole situation there. Just to verify that Mike Hughes has canceled that launch. Is that what I saw correctly?
He has, because the local government there blocked it. They would not let him do it for safety concerns, etc. Myself, I'm glad, because I know he was paid to put that on his rocket. He is not a flat earth researcher.
All right.
We all have a pretty good idea who paid for that, but we're not going to get into all of that because, again, drama is not why we're here. But I'm glad it didn't go off, myself personally.
So that was my
rescheduling? Have they got a new date?
Not yet. Not as he did a video update about a little, like 3, 4, 5 minute video update on this earlier this morning, and that's all I've seen so far before we came here on the show.
And Crow, real quick before you take off, I have a question from Karen B in chat. Have you looked into sort of the electromagnetic relationship here that we have down here on Earth with what's going on in the sky? Just sort of the way it acts here on Earth. How do you have any sort of insight as to what sort of role that's going to be playing in the near future?
Okay, so I'm not sure that I understand what's being asked.
I'm not sure. Let me scroll back up. No, I'm just completely paraphrasing it out of my butt. Karen, if you're still listening, I'm trying to scroll up to find it. I just remembered
take it out of butt English. Read it verbatim.
Damn it, I speak butt English so well. All right. Have you looked in?
You do, sir.
So the question specifically is, ask Crow if he has looked into electromagnetism and its role in our construct.
I guess the honest answer to that would be no. I'm not sure exactly what's being asked, but to be honest about electromagnetism, I don't even think that's come up too much in any of our shows beyond the idea of poles or the center of this plane we exist on, these types of ideas. But specifically as to how electromagnetism works, no, would be the answer, I guess.
Well, may I further the question a bit with, do you feel like going on record or even talking to your opinion of the sun and moon and what is going on? You've looked at it in ways. I know you went from the early days of maybe it being a hologram refresh rate, the lunar wave, to liquid space. What's going on now? What do you think is happening up there?
So in my estimation, the moon is misdescribed. As you pointed out, I made the mistake of trying to describe it as a hologram early on, which was a big mistake. It led people away from the moon itself to try to figure out how that would even be possible with hologram technology. I later said it was likely a facade, and that created similar problems. So I regrouped, and after maybe another year and a half of observation, I began to say, the moon is not a rock in space. It likely generates its own light, and that it is much closer to us, as is the sun, than we have been told. That's my current stance. In terms of space being liquid, I'm pretty sure most people have heard, how besides the lunar wave and all the physical observation I did that wouldn't get me where I wanted to be, I finally took language apart using the JFK "We're going to the moon" speech finally. Looking for the maritime language to make the announcement. So that's kind of an abridged version, I think, of what you asked me.
Nice. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming. I know it is a little bit more laid back than maybe you're used to, but that is kind of how we roll around here.
Fine by me, man. It gets old having to be on all the time and so measured. It's hard. You see, that's part of me dodging trying to be in the spotlight. It's hard to be on and measured and quoted and challenged all the time. Sometimes it's nice just to kick back, man.
Well, you're welcome here to chill with us anytime, my friend. Anytime.
All right. Well, you guys are doing it. I won't promise you 3 hours every time, but I'm happy to return.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Friend.
Thank you so much, Crow. Be sure to
all
check.
Right, you guys.
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, again, I'm here all the time. You have the floor. This is your time. Take up as much as you want.
It sounded like you were about to sing Wahoo Dory, and I interrupted you, so maybe that's how we should close, right? Wahoo Dory, Wahoo Dory. All right, guys. I'm going to take off. I don't know what you guys are doing, and thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Crow.
And send me a link.
Take it easy.
Not that I think I can get through this 3 hours again, but anyhow, send me a link. There it is. Cheers, man.
Will do.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, Crow. Everybody check Crow out at his website at Crrow777radio.com, Crrow777radio.com. John, was that a little bit easier to understand? I wanted to make sure I got
Take two V's.
Yeah,
W.
no W's.
It's a W.
Yeah. We're there. We got it. What a great show.
I so thoroughly enjoyed that. I was in rapt awe as I was taking my son to his job, which was a little bit ridiculous here on this godforsaken Black Friday because he's now working retail. But
Oh, poor child.
it was. You guys are doing such a good. I just loved listening. It was one of those things where I didn't know if I needed to stay in the car and listen longer or rush
Honestly,
downstairs
Josh,
so I could join in. I didn't know what to do.
I got to the point you were talking about today on the morning show with me where I was so just wrapped up in what he was actually saying. It was like I'm watching another YouTube video. I completely forgot I could actually ask questions and change the flow of the conversation for a few minutes there.
I
was brilliant.
love that. Yeah, I hope that
I think it
should go down in the record books. I really do. Did I just lose
Well, to the
everybody?
panel, we
No.
appreciate it, guys. Thank you all so much. As always, you guys make it great. Rob, sorry you had to cut out. Adam, definitely sorry you're feeling bad, my friend. James, so glad you were here with us. John, mate, my friend, my buddy, I'm glad you definitely hung to the end with me. And Josh, sir, as always, thank you for all you do for us here on this mad cat herding job you have undertaken.
Well, luckily it wasn't too hard this week. I just kind of pointed everybody in one direction and waited to see where they all intersected. Luckily, it all worked out well. I think we only got throttled a couple
apologies again to
times.
Stan and Ceres with the issue with the Google and the Skype. We'll get all that worked out, guys, and get you on here straight away as soon as possible. We'll figure it out for sure. So sorry again that it all kind of fell through to this last second, realizing we weren't compatible anymore. So
Yeah, I think we'll be moving away from Skype. Doesn't seem to work with a lot of our people.
well, it keeps us from getting sniped, but it's definitely causing issues.
Does.
We'll have to find
Yeah.
a middle ground here. Maybe do a little more snipe training ourselves. And avoid Timmy tissue time.
Anyway, guys, that was an absolutely awesome show. Thanks a lot. And I will no doubt catch up with you tomorrow.
No
Absolutely.
doubt. Awesome. Thank you so much, John. It was a pleasure. I love you and sleep well. I know it's late out there.
Be well, mate.
All right, Walter, I guess that's going to about do it for us, too. Makes it for a long Friday.
Yeah.
But this was the easiest Friday in a long time. I'm really not that tired.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty pumped.
It was great.
That was exciting.
Well, I guess hit the button, Josh.
All right. We'll go out Crow style. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Josh Corey. This has been Iron Rail Media's Flat Earth Friday Fringe-Cast. Thank you, Crrow777, for coming on and giving us your time. I'm going to get the hell out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week. Don't forget to check out Walt and I on the Ironworks on Truth Frequency Radio, TFRlive.com, Tuesdays and Fridays, 2 a.m. Pacific, 4 a.m. Central. That puts it right at 10 a.m. GMT. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'll see you next week. TGIF, thank God it's flat. I love you guys. Make better choices than you did yesterday.
Can't get no better.